Okay, we are live.
Okie dokie. All right, thanks. We'll begin the Planning Committee meeting of Akron City Council here at 101, Monday, November 2nd. I'd like to entertain a motion that we accept the minutes of the last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. So today we have 3 items that are up for a public hearing. The procedures will be a representative from our planning department will read in and report on the conditional use request. After that, we will then ask if there's anyone wishing to testify that they be sworn in from a representative of our law department. After that, we'll ask for any of those that are in favor to speak, and then if there's anyone who's opposed, or even if there's anyone who has just questions. Those are the procedures. After that, the committee then will have an opportunity to ask questions. We will then open it up to all of City Council for questions or comments. And then after that, we'll essentially repeat that process this evening at 7 o'clock. And of course, invite all those who wish to attend and or testify this evening at 7. The only main difference is that the committee will make a recommendation to all of council in reference to the conditional use request, either to approve, disapprove, or to table the item, take time. Those are our procedures that we have. And so the first item that's up for a public hearing is an ordinance authorizing conditional use to construct a parking space within a front yard setback at 1259 East Avenue. Mr. Antonucci.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Jeanette Farrell is requesting permission to construct a parking space adjacent to the East Avenue right-of-way. The desired proximity to the right-of-way requires conditional use approval. Petitioner is attempting to provide a suitable parking space for a handicapped tenant. The general topography of this portion of East Avenue slopes downward immediately from the street at a significant grade. Consequently, the drive does not currently have a level parking surface. The proposed parking space will be paved with asphalt grindings within the short front yard area. Access to the parking space would be from the current driveway on the north side of the house. Planning staff, as well as other city departments, have concerns about the ability to ensure that vehicles would not impede the right-of-way and allow for safe passage to pedestrian traffic on the sidewalk at all times. The Metro RTA bus stop at this location further complicates the situation. Maneuvering in the space would be exacerbated by a utility pole adjacent to the curb cut and the angle of the driveway to the street. Requested parking space would not seem to solve the need to provide a level parking space without creating other safety issues. Both planning staff and planning commission recommended disapproval. However, since the planning commission, the planning staff did look at this a little bit more closely, and we do have a drawing that shows a parking space in front of the house. If council wants to see that, I can share that screen.
Yes, please.
So can you see that now? Wait a minute. There we go. So you see here's the parking space is the dots there, the shaded pattern there coming in this driveway. Currently there's a bus stop right here at this location. Talked to Metro RTA and they are willing to move that bus stop. So that's a possibility that the bus stop could be moved. That was one of the concerns that we had early on. So if council, wishes to consider this for approval, that is a possibility that bus stop could be moved. I know that the resident here at 1263 would like it moved closer to her house. So we'd also have that with railroad ties. So the parking spot can't encroach on the neighboring property. So that's, and I can stop the share now.
Thank you for that report, Mr. Antonucci. Thank you. At this point, we'll open it up for a public hearing and ask if there's anyone here that wishes to speak at this public hearing. Is there anyone, Sarah, who's signed up?
Yes, we have a Jeanette Farrell who signed up to speak at this hearing. Ms. Farrell, are you here? She is here. It looks like she's connecting to audio.
Okay,
Let's give her just one moment.
very good. Mr. York, you're going to be up next.
Thank you.
Ms. Farrell, did you just get a prompt that asks you to unmute? I'm going to try to send that prompt again.
Unmute. Okay.
Here she goes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Farrell, if you don't mind, we'd like ask you to be sworn in by a representative of our law department. That would be Mr. York. Mr. York, take it away.
Thank you. Ms. Farrell, do you have video?
I should. I'm on my smartphone.
Could you click the video button?
Oh, yes.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you. Would you please raise your right hand?
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. York. Ms. Farrell, please, by all means, you're welcome to provide any testimony that you would like in reference to the conditional use request.
Okay. My name's Jeanette Farrell. I am owner of 1259 East Avenue. And my goal is to get approval to provide an adequate, safe place for tenants to park. I'm not sure if I hold up pictures or drawings, are you able to see these, or is it just audio?
Sarah?
We can see you if you want to give that a try.
Okay, all right. So this is a duplex, and there are 3 individuals who drive. The tenant has a handicap permit. I don't know if you guys are able to see the picture here of the handicap permit.
Mm-hmm.
Also has a sign out front of the home with the reserved parking. And this picture does show the vehicle where they are parking. He has health issues, COPD being one, and so just trying to make it so that he has a flat surface to get out of his vehicle and be able to get into the home. And if you can see this picture, it does show that they are attempting to park up in there and get off the sidewalk. So there isn't a whole lot hanging over, a little bit of that bumper hanging over the public sidewalk, but that's what we're trying to take care of, is to get parking where they can pull up in there. He's able to get out of the vehicle. This is showing the front yard here. You can see this. Here's the concrete sidewalk going up to the front door. And this is the area here that I would like to bring in concrete and either use railroad ties or a concrete barrier here at the corner of the home across, so that a vehicle will not be allowed into the neighbor's yard. It will need to be brought up a little bit to get the to smooth it out and get the grade that's needed. I have spoken with Barberton Asphalt. They have come out and looked at the project, and also my helper has a neighbor, James, who's been doing concrete for 25 years plus here in the Akron area and has worked with the inspectors here. So he has looked at putting in concrete or whatever would work out best in here for the tenants to come up and park. And he would put in a drain system to take care of water not running down into the home, and some kind of border, like I said, to keep tenants off the sidewalk and out of the neighbor's yard. This was from Mr. Antonucci, the drawing that was done up here. So, so on this drawing, there is 27 feet available at the largest area. The house is kind of on a slant here, 27 feet, and then coming from the neighbor's yard to the sidewalk, and then 15 feet coming from the home to the sidewalk this way. So in my opinion, there's plenty of room there to be able to get a little parking pad so that the tenants can get up off the sidewalk and, like I said, have a safe place to park, get out of the vehicle, and be able to go into the home. This is a picture showing the north side. I guess Mr. Antonucci said this is the north side of the home where the existing driveway is. It is an 8-foot drop down to the bottom here of the driveway. There's also an access door here to the basement that I believe would need to be accessible from the inside of the home as well as from the outside of the home. So to figure out a way to fill this in and bring it up and bring it, safe. There's maybe about 3 feet here in a walkway and 7 feet of driveway. I've like I said, I've had these two individuals look, and it just does not seem feasible to put a barrier in here, leave that door accessible, and give a flat place to park. Also, at the end of the driveway, I don't know if this picture really shows very well, but at the end of the driveway, there's just a drop off. And so my concern also is safety with if it snows or is icy, that this driveway might be slick for somebody to be able to stop before hitting the bottom and possibly going directly off the end here, which drops down pretty significantly. So this is my drawing, and it's not a very good one, but like I said, there's 27 feet from the edge of the house out to the sidewalk in the largest area, and 15 feet from the corner here over to the existing sidewalk of area to work with, to put some kind of road mixer concrete, to put a barrier up, to allow the tenant to get off the sidewalk as to not construct or impose people using that sidewalk. And they would use the existing driveway to back out, which is what they are doing now. They would also use the existing driveway and parking in the driveway to come out. So either way, that existing driveway would be used in this situation.
Thank you, Ms. Farrell.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to have any comments, make any comments, reference the conditional use request at 1259 East Avenue? Anyone else wishing to make any comments in favor? Anyone? Anyone wishing to make any comments against 1259 East Avenue? Any against? Any questions? Very good. Seeing none, Ms. Farrell will invite you back this evening at 7 o'clock for the second public hearing, and then the committee will make a recommendation, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, very good. The next item up for the public agenda or for the conditional use is authorizing conditional use to establish a type A child daycare home at 1290 Country Club Drive and declaring an emergency. Mr. Antonucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Grace Wadood is requesting permission to establish a type A child daycare home at this location. The proposed type A daycare home would occupy the main portion of the lower level of the over 3,000 square foot two-story dwelling. Care for a maximum of 12 children would be provided by the petitioner. Her staff would also include 2 full-time child care assistants. Child care services will be available 24 hours, 7 days a week. A large outdoor play area is available in the petitioner's backyard, as well as additional visits to the nearby park. The property contains a driveway capable of providing ample space for drop-off and pickup of the children. Petitioner has operated a daycare for up to 6 children at this property since 2016. Petitioner holds a bachelor's degree in social work, has obtained her Child Development Associate, CDA credentials, and has over 6 years of experience in being a child care administrator. Property is well maintained and on a lightly traveled residential street. Providing quality daycare services is beneficial to the entire city, and as such, Office of Integrated Development and planning staff recommend approval, subject to conditions. Planning Commission recommends disapproval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. At this point, I know there's a number of people here wishing to testify before the committee. I will ask that you please make sure your video is on, and as well as your microphones. And Mr. York, if you'd like to swear in anyone who wishes to testify before the committee, reference 1290 Country Club Drive. Mr. York.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like the chairman said, if you could please unmute your microphones at this time, if you intend to testify regarding 1290 Country Club Drive. I see there's a Gary J that's still muted. Mrs. Wadood, it looks like you're still muted. Can you unmute your microphone, Mrs. Wadood? There should be an icon there on the lower part of your screen. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
So what I'm going to ask you all to do is please raise your right hands. There's a Mr. Lewis. Mr. Lewis, are you there? All right, we'll go ahead with everyone else besides Mr. Lewis. I need you to unmute your microphone.
I think he's on the next hearing, Mr. York.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll swear him in now. Do you all swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. York. At this time, we'll open up a public hearing. And as previously mentioned, we'll ask those who wish to testify in favor to speak and those against. I was provided a list of those who wish to speak this afternoon. What I plan on doing is I'll just read in your name. I assume this is the way they arrived. And then you can go ahead and go because there's so many. Usually we have 2 or 3, but there's quite a few of you here and we welcome that. Absolutely. So with that, we're going to ask, is there anyone here, if you could please provide for us your name and address. But if there's anyone here wishing to testify in favor of the conditional use request at 1290 Country Club Drive, please feel free to let us, you're welcome.
Okay, now who's he speaking to?
Yeah, go ahead. Say my name is Camille.
My name is Camille Wadood, 1290 Country Club Drive. This is my wife, Grace. Okay, can you hear us okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know where to begin, but I think it's fair for me to start with what was said to us in the last meeting, of which, for whatever reasons, we weren't able to be heard. Number one, I challenge everything that was said, and if it was said under oath, then they perjured themselves. Because a lot of what was said, let me give you an example, that Mr. Odom was not informed that we were looking to increase the capacity of our daycare. And in fact, he was informed. Documentations was signed by Snyder and Snyder, who legally represent Mr. Odom. And those documents will validate that he was informed. Okay. The second part of it I might need to mention is that the daycare to increase was not intended to necessarily have 12 children, but that to be in compliance with the state, to having 7 or 6 or even 8 to 12 is to be in compliance, all right? The claims that people were zooming in and out and around looking for our daycare, that was fabricated. That was not a fact. All the other allegations were not factual. We have cameras around the entire 360 of the perimeter, and those cameras record exactly who pulls in at what time. The allegations of that the children are out and about unattended is a lie, a blatant lie. The allegations about they're making too much noise and complaining about that, well, we have a neighbor that has a vicious dog that got into our yard that almost attacked my wife and had my wife not close the patio door. And we did not respond to retaliate in spite of the fact that that household in question, their dog bit a pizza delivery man in violation of the Vicious Act law. But rather than to go into all the pettiness of all the different complaints and so forth, my question would be to the committee and or to our neighbors, what is it that they fear? The daycare is here not just for the children, primarily is here to ensure that their parents can get to and from work. I'm gonna give you a quick synopsis on what transpired with a young lady named Spanish, who was in clinicals after having helped her through school for the last 4 to 6 years since being in our daycare. At the bottom of the ninth, she almost failed clinical. So we had to make sure and ensure that her children were taken care of so that she can graduate. She did graduate, and she's a nurse right now, a practicing nurse, an RN. As a lot of the members of our daycare work at hospitals, in the middle of the pandemic, I heard on the news this morning our governor implored us to all unite during and after this election to ensure that we unite because of this pandemic. Well, our neighbors don't really care about the pandemic. They care about property tax. They care about whether or not their property value decreases, perhaps. 4 years ago, one of the daycares that we founded called with Mary Doja, our neighbor, okay? We founded that daycare. We founded Lillian's daycare with Auntie Bunny. Robin's Nest daycare. We have a dozen different locations, including the one on Aberdeen. We started where my daughter has the daycare there, all right, kiddo care. With all of about a dozen different locations that I personally, when I started this business, implored my wife to get into this business, who was formerly employed with Children's Services, and she did. We've helped an insurmountable of people to rise up and out, and students that were in school to rise up and out, and children who needed to be cared for essential employees. I didn't bother about all of this until the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, it was important for us to try to increase the size to help people. I would have thought, and I would have bet my last on, that my neighbors would have cared to pull people up and out of given circumstances during this pandemic. We've been quite successful at doing that. What is their fear? Why would they not just say yay or nay? Why would they try to pat it like it was said that Mr. White Mike Williams represented a half a dozen other addresses, of which was not validated or substantiated? But how on earth can someone on Dearborn, the horseshoe that goes around Menlo Park and Country Club Drive, how on earth could they be affected by our daycare here is beyond me. So they perjured themselves in as much as that being under oath and lying, I mean viciously lying.
Okay, sir. Yeah, with all respect, sir, we try to stick to the issue itself, this conditional use zoning piece. Yeah, that's what we're here for. Thank you.
Let's stick with that. In 1968, John McKnight had coined the phrase redlining. This is another systematic attempt to ensure not zoning, but redlining who does what in this neighborhood. They don't want us parked out in front. They don't want commercial vehicles here. When in fact, just a few doors down, there's a commercial vehicle parked out there whose truck was sideswiped, but it's parked there, no one's complaining. So if it's actually about zoning, we didn't ask to put a liquor store here, which they turned down over on Talmadge when we petitioned to open up a daycare there. The Napoleons ended up opening up a grocery store. Well, the liquor store was adjacent, not too far from North High School, so they turned that down. They got the grocery store. We're not trying to put a grocery store here or a liquor store here. We're trying to assist those who are trying to assist themselves with having daycare accessible to essential employees of hospitals, etc. What is their fear? That they deny that and then stack the deck against us, fabricating the fact under oath that children are unattended, that the noise level is too loud, that one thing after the next, in order to turn down, and we were not given the opportunity to speak, and this is why we're appealing it now. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would like to add concerning the traffic that has been complained that we have here. A lot of our parents, they come, we have an attendance sheet. This is one of our attendance sheets that we have every morning of our parents who are coming in to pick up their children from overnight, and for parents who are dropping their children off in the morning. And they have to sign in. The parents sign in and sign out are in 5 to 10 minute intervals, in increments rather, of the time one come in and the other depart. So it's very, very rarely that we have a congestive flow of traffic coming through, that cars who may be coming out of our neighbors' driveways coming through. It has never been a time where they had to stop and wait until people from our driveway back out or to come in. And that was just a major concern that we had, that the neighbors were saying that the traffic flow is bad here. And the parents very rarely are in connection with one another when they come and go to pick up their children.
It was a lie. It's as simple as that. And it's documented from the cameras of each one that pulls in or pulls out, that we can validate, substantiate in a court of law that no, it's not a traffic jam. It's not a large quantity of people showing up. And if in any case, anybody roll up on this address to bring or pick up children, blowing up their boombox, oh no, that is unacceptable here.
Yeah, that's another thing that was stated concerning our home daycare, that the music is loud. And anytime a client would come and pick up their child with their music loud, many times I would, or on those occasions, I would immediately leave out the door, the daycare door, and meet them and ask them to please turn your volume down. This is a business here, and we do not want to interrupt or disturb our neighbors in any way. And 100% of our clients have complied with our request to lower their music and raise it when they leave on going West Market or whatever, but they have all complied. Many times I've sat right here in this office where I'm sitting at now and heard drivers drive through this neighborhood with their volumes sky high, and I would stop and turn and look out the window, and I can guarantee you that those people were not coming here.
Now, having said that,
Okay.
it was mentioned to us about this picture right here. I'm sure you remember this. This picture.
In the interest of time, I apologize, but if we can just stick to the conditional use request, and if you could kind of wrap it up, we'd appreciate that. We have a couple other items on our agenda today.
All
Okay.
right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up with this. This was a gift from my daughter. It had nothing to do with the governor's request to have type A in a type B neighborhood. We were given a temporary license, type A license by the governor. It was rescinded the next day or two, I guess for the fears of the mortgage association or maybe constituents that vote for him. I don't know why. I don't really care why. We complied with it. This had nothing to do with this picture here having something to do with, because we assumed that we were getting it. All right. I would like zoning to validate all of the allegations that were made towards our daycare, because what they did and what they implied to the city and the state was a blatant lie. Now we're requesting zoning for type A. The president would like to see it happen, that we at least adhere to his request trying to assist with this pandemic. The governor has tried to assist with this pandemic, and all the other neighborhoods that we have that we founded and that we hope to get started have a type A, most of them. All right. But this neighborhood, you stack the odds up by fabricating the facts, and those facts can be validated in a court of law.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request on Country Club Drive, 1290? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else? Okay. I'm not seeing anyone or hearing anyone. I'm now going to go through the list and ask that Anna and David Ramito, are you here? And would you like to testify? Anna or David Ramito? Okay, I'm not seeing you. We'll now move down. Jeff King, is there a
Yes.
Jeff King here?
Yes, there is.
Okay, Mr. King, please, by all means, you're welcome to speak.
I think the whole point of this meeting was this neighborhood does not want a type A business. We do not want a business in here. Everything that Mr. Wadud says is a lie is his opinion. He has no proof that these are lies. I live 2 doors down at 108 Menlo Park Drive and know that it's not a commercial vehicle in my driveway. It's my son's private car, and yes, it was hit. He doesn't live here. He sometimes parks here. So that point is, I don't know why he bothered to make it. 2, I sit outside constantly. I love to be outside. There are cars and noise that, since they looks like they've closed down, is half or a quarter of what it used to be. There is the noise, there is the cars, there is the kids. And now it looks like they're trying to apply for this license, and they've taken all the objections out. They removed all the vehicles that people complained about. They've done this, that, and the other. So it looks like they're just trying to make a facade to say that these are wonderful people. To me, all these people are doing is tooting their own horns as to what they're doing for the wonderful society. That's wonderful, but we do not want a Class A business in our neighborhood. It's just as simple as that. Thank you.
Why?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. King. Next, I'd like to invite Stephen White. If you'd like to provide testimony to the committee, you're welcome to. Mr. White?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
All right. My name is Stephen White. I live on Dearborn Drive. And what Mr. Wadu said about me, something about traffic and lying about that. First of all, I find that absurd. We do not want a type A business in our neighborhood. We don't want any business in our neighborhood whatsoever. We already have a daycare right across the street. They applied for a type A a number of years ago, and they were turned down. I don't know how long that is in effect for. But it
I
just
apologize,
goes to the
Mr. White.
point.
I have to step away for a
Neighborhood
second.
is
I'm going to ask Mr. Kamer to please
elongated.
forward with the meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our chairperson, Jeff Fusco, had to step away. So my name is Councilman Donnie Kamer. And the gentleman that was just speaking, go ahead and continue, please.
All right, my name is Stephen White. What they said about, not having traffic and that I was lying about that, I did not lie. There is more traffic coming down my street. And we don't really need it. Dozier applied for a type A a number of years ago, and she was turned down. Mr. Wadood and his wife, Grace, are applying for a type A, and we do not want any business. They're tooting their own horn, like Mr. King said, about all these childcare centers that they have started. They're basically making money off of children, which is really, to me, is all right to a certain point. If you want to do that, then go to a commercial area. This is a residential neighborhood. A lot of new families have moved in with young children, and I am afraid for these kids because they like to play in the street and do other things. I'm very much afraid of that. As far as the type A goes, again, as I said, if you want to create a business, then create a business in an area that is designated commercial. We don't want you to do a business in our residential neighborhood. There is other things that sort of bother me. Mr. King was saying that the house has been cleaned up. It is, the house has been cleaned up. The Wadus have no interest in this neighborhood. They are renters. And after this first ejection was brought forth, the house immediately went on the market, and it's on the market now. And I believe the Oldhams just don't want to get involved in it for their own personal reasons. That is fine. This is my opinion, and I hope that this is turned down. And I thank the committee for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. White. At this point, I'd like to ask Mr. Gary Johnson if you'd like to provide testimony to the committee. You're welcome to begin now. Thank you. And I'd also like to request too that before everyone speaks, if you could provide for the committee your address and your name. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Fusco. My name is Gary Johnson, and my wife and I both live at 1246 Dearborn Drive. We've lived here for almost 6 years now. And I'm very concerned about this application. I guess through all this process, I learned that the city of Akron does allow type B permission, which is 6 or less children to be in a daycare facility in any residential area. That obviously came as a surprise. But now to increase the capability, even though Mr. Wadood said it doesn't necessarily mean 12, but to increase the capability to go up to 12 by type A, and having the opportunity to voice my concerns about that, leave me no choice but to provide some testimony. Number one, what's a question to me is the house is now for sale. The Wadoods are renters. They have no stake in this residential area. When Beth and I moved in here, we looked for a quiet neighborhood, and this is certainly a quiet neighborhood. But now there is some increase in traffic, and that is troubling. Whether or not that's all attributed to Mr. Wadood and his enterprise is, I guess, not my understanding. It's only the fact that other neighbors who have witnessed this firsthand have told me that this is a situation that needs to be addressed. The neighborhood is changing a little bit now. When we moved in, there were a lot of just men and women living in in their particular residences, but now families are moving in with younger children. It was witnessed by this past weekend. We had a Halloween get together in the neighborhood, and I was told it was the first time in 16 years that this has happened. That means younger kids are coming in the neighborhood. Increased traffic in younger kids are certainly not a good formula. There are some concerns. The fact that the streets are not lit. We do not have any street lights in this whole area. And after 6 o'clock now, it gets awfully dark. And in the mornings, in the summertime, it's darker in the morning. And with people dropping kids off and kids around without streetlights, I think that just exacerbates the problems that we have. and to allow a commercial establishment to operate in an area that looks a little unsafe, I think it can be a very dangerous proposition. I realize that the house is for sale now, and it's beyond me as to why a renter that does not have a stake in a neighborhood can apply for a type A application. I know that's law, but it's amazing to me that they can do that when they have no stake in the neighborhood. They can move out anytime they want. They don't have any loss of home ownership or anything of that nature, while we're left holding the bag as residents who have tried to move in here in a nice, quiet neighborhood. There are very few sidewalks in the area. There's a small sidewalk that goes along the curb, along Mr. Wadood's property, along Mr. King's property, along Menlo Park. But other than that, there are no sidewalks. We get a lot of walkers in the neighborhood, people walking their dogs, walking their kids. And because of the fact there are no sidewalks, they have to walk in the street. That's fine. It's a great place to run. It's a great place to walk. It's quiet. However, additional traffic can make that a lot more dangerous. And no matter what anyone says, if you're going to increase the number of children that you can have in your facility, that's going to mean an increase in traffic, no matter what. So it concerns me. We moved into a residential neighborhood. I know my neighbors around here want to maintain a residential neighborhood. We don't want a business, no matter what it is, whether it's a daycare center, whether it's a grocery store or whatever. If I wanted that, I would have lived on Market Street or Exchange, and then understood that that comes with the territory. But living on Dearborn and in the areas of Country Club, Belhar, Elmo, Menlo Park, there was an expectation of single family residents, no businesses. And my wife and I are strongly objecting to this particular application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite David and Nancy Colley.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, did somebody?
My name is Stephen White again. May I speak? I forgot to say something.
Well, that's usually, this evening at 7 o'clock, you'd be welcome back if you'd like to say something at that time. It's 7 o'clock, but usually we don't.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. David and Nancy Colley.
David and Nancy Coley, 1287 Country Club Drive. We are right across the street from the petitioner's house. I would like to say, first of all, I resent Mr. Wadood accusing any of his neighbors of perjuring themselves. If anything, Mrs. Wadood was given the opportunity to speak at the the planning commission meeting, the zoning board, I mean, and elected not to. And about 10 of us probably spoke against it, and she did not say a word. The vote was taken, and then it appeared that she tried to speak. At that point, it was too late. But she had an opportunity like we all did, and probably 10 of us spoke. So that's really not true. But anyway, we do live across the street. They're doubling the children from 6 to 12, plus going to maybe up to 3 shifts a day. That means you could have 12 kids in each shift, if I understand it correctly, which would be an 8-hour shift or so. That could be as many as 36 children living there at any given time during these 8-hour shifts. So, this is, as we said, a residential neighborhood. Businesses belong, or businesses are commercial areas. West Market Street's nearby and other streets. So the traffic, I disagree. The traffic is heavy at times. It's actually a cut through from people who live on Hollywood and some other streets that go up to West Market Street. So it is not, it's lightly traveled on days sometimes, but many times it is not lightly traveled. There is a daycare right across the street that has up to the 6 children. You're right, there is a truck parked there. Mr. Wadood mentioned that. And it's often parked in front of the fire hydrant. I think it is right now. That's irrelevant, but we do notice those things. This is the first I've heard that they're doing this on behalf of the pandemic response. And, when the pandemic's over, I don't think they're going to go back to only having 6 children. So we don't believe it'd be prudent to allow this during this time, and hopefully the pandemic will be over. We don't need to have a business in a residential neighborhood. They have cleaned up the property, but maybe that's temporary. I don't know. There've usually been trailers out there, motorcycles, trucks, with limousine, various other cars and vehicles. I think partially that is because there's part of the daycare looks like it's in the garage. So I'm not sure if that's a correct zoning, but I'm not a lawyer. Again, petitioner is not the owner of the property. It's being sold. And I did talk to the landlord, Mr. Oldham, and my recollection was that he was not aware that they were going to try to increase from 6 to 12 children. So that is my recollection of my conversation with them. And that's what I had to say. Go ahead. Nancy, you want to say something?
I was just going to say that already on her website, she had put that the zoning was going to be increased, and then get your reservations in, because she was already expecting 12 people. So I don't know, we don't have a problem with them trying to have a business and trying to help the pandemic, but we just want them to do it in a commercial area like West Market Street or White Pond or some other spot, but not in a residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Anthony Piscazzi. If you'd like to make some comments, you're welcome to at this time.
Thank you. Yeah, so a lot of what I'm going to touch on is you've heard already. But I do want to say, as the homeowner adjacent to this property, we do have some firsthand experience with the noise pollution. The increased traffic, I think, can cause some concern, but with the coming and going of families all hours of the day, oftentimes, the cars will pull in and they'll beep their horn and, repeatedly. And with, the family that just moved in on the other side of them and ours, we have children that are sleeping at night. It has woken up my child. We have our daughter is just under 1, and there were nights when, we were having a hard time getting her to sleep. And just as we get her down, you hear that beeping horn, she's up again. So yes, there is noise pollution. No, we have never directly brought it up to them, mostly out of just not really wanting to have confrontation. Also with that, something else was brought up about property valuation. First off, the fact that this house is for sale and was put on the market immediately after the Wadudes went for the type A daycare variance, which in that meeting, one of the committee members did state that I believe it was Jeff Oldham emailed and stated he was not aware they were going for this variance. I think the fact that they put this on the market immediately is kind of a sign that they are not for this, and they kind of want to wash their hands of it. The reality is it will devalue, it does devalue the neighboring properties because this is not a business district. The desire to move into this neighborhood is to be close to the heart of the city of Akron, but also have the luxury of being in a quiet, well-kept neighborhood. So that's why we moved there. And it sounds like from everybody that spoke today so far and at the last meeting, that's why everybody moved here. We don't want a business of any kind, whether it be a catering, daycare, construction company, anywhere in this neighborhood. I own a business. I wouldn't put it in my neighborhood. West Market Street is just a stone's throw away. And I can tell you right now in the city of Akron, there are plenty of opportunities for commercial space. And Mr. Wadude just stated that apparently he either owns or is involved in many of these daycares. So to me, it would make sense if you want to grow, maybe move to a commercial property. There's plenty of them available, and landlords are looking for tenants. Also, I'd like to make aware that there are currently 64 type B daycares in the city of Akron, 18 type A daycares already. So I don't know that there's really a need. Of those type A daycares, there are 2 in our zip code, 1 on Castle Boulevard, just a few blocks away, and 3 more in neighboring zip codes. The state of Ohio has what's called a step up to quality rating. It's a 5-star rating. The Wadudes daycare is a 1 out of 5-star rating. So when they claim that they're, creating this wonderful environment, I would say they're doing a 1 out of 5-star job. And I think the state would agree with me. The reality is we don't need this. We don't want it. You know, Mr. Woodard kept talking about facts, and the fact is this is not a business district, and everybody in this neighborhood has stepped up and said they do not want it. And we are asking the city council to back us up on this. It's not personal. We just don't want this in our neighborhood. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Piscazzi. Next, I'd like to invite Barbie LaRose. If you'd like to provide testimony, you're welcome to at this point. I think you're muted. Perfect.
Thank you. My name is Barbara Carol LaRose. I was born in 1954 and since then have lived on Copley Road, Kenilworth Avenue, Portage Path, and since 1964 on Dearborn Drive. My parents built this home. I care deeply about West Akron. Zoning laws have been in place for over 100 years in our country. According to the Ohio Department of Health, zoning protects public health, welfare, and promotes community character by organizing land into clearly defined districts based on the type and intensity of the use. The separation of uses allows communities and neighborhoods to regulate growth, development, and to preserve community character. The neighborhood, the subject daycare is requesting a variance to operate its business has long been established as a low-density residential neighborhood for generations and generations. Generally speaking, daycares are for-profit ventures as evidenced by their request to increase the number of attendees. That, given the nature of the use, city residential neighborhood. I, like many of my neighbors, do not understand why the Oldhams are not being involved or getting involved in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. LaRose. Thank you for your testimony. Certainly, last but not least, I'm sure, I see Michael Williams here. Welcome, Michael. You're welcome to provide testimony at this time. I think you're on mute. The mute. Mike, if you could hit the mute, unmute.
Gotcha.
There you go.
That's right there. Good afternoon. Members of the planning committee, council members, city staff, and members of the public. I'm not going to try to repeat some of the things that have already been said, but I do want to reiterate that I am representing residents at my neighbors at 1260 Country Club, 1277 Country Club, 1251 Country Club, 1239 Country Club, 1236 Country Club, and 1217 Country Club. These are all neighbors that we have had extensive conversations about this conditional zoning request, and we are all uniform in our objection to the expansion of the daycare. Now, what's interesting is that we have two daycares and they are right across the street from each other. The other one is at 1274, which is almost directly across the street from me. We have not had any of these kinds of issues or complaints about 1274. The people, the parents come up, pick up their children. There's no horn honking. There's none of this other stuff that we and the neighbors have been talking about. Now, much of the stuff I can't hear based upon where I am in location to the home where the petitioner is requesting. However, I have spoken to almost all of the neighbors, and the closer you get, the larger the number of complaints that come up, particularly as it relates to noise and traffic. There are no sidewalks in our neighborhood. And I'd like to say the sidewalk that is in front of the petitioner's residence is a half a sidewalk. It's not a full sidewalk. So it's kind of like a half a sidewalk. But the other streets in the area do not have sidewalks. Because of the pandemic, we have a substantial increase in the number of walkers and pedestrians in our particular neighborhood. There's an increased number of runners. There's an increased number of bicyclists. And very happily, we have an increased number of children who live in the neighborhood. I have been a resident here for 16 years, and we had our first trick or treat this past Saturday in our neighborhood. And most of us, we were more excited than the kids as it relates to that. The one thing that the petitioner cannot control is traffic. And this is very clear. If you watch this particular household, you do not have to watch it long. Now, they've done some things to try to lower the activity at this particular residence within the last couple months. They have removed some vehicles. They have, and it's clear that they've talked to many of the people who are customers of theirs. However, I can tell you, and I have personally witnessed the horn honking coming up to the house, which is totally contrary to what happens at 1274, where it's clear that they phone call, they do something, they are handling their business at 1274, as opposed to how things are being handled at 1290, the subject residence we're talking about. I too am a little taken aback by the accusations of perjury. I have talked, as I said, we are a closely knit neighborhood and getting closer each day. We do not have an objection per se, and we, by law, we are required to accept a child care center at the lower rating level. What we object to is an increase in that amount of children and the traffic that is generated by that and would be generated by that increase. In addition, the petitioner has not shown us by how they have operated in the past that they will operate any differently in the future. And to have clear examples right across the street from each other. And it's pretty evident by the reaction of the residents who have observed what is going on there. Many of them did not know that it was a daycare, but they knew that there was a lot of activity at that particular residence. And that's opposed to the property right across the street where it is clearly being operated in a different fashion. So also to say that we don't care about the pandemic, I think is totally incorrect. I know in talking with my neighbors, we are all conducting ourselves in a way to limit our exposure. And we are aware of the need for daycare, but we are also aware that there are plenty of commercial areas where if they wish to expand, if they wish to do more, if they wish to reach out and expand their activities, they have the opportunity to do so in a non-residential area. So with that, I think I've said everything I need to say, and I appreciate the Planning Commission for their recommendation opposing this. I would ask that the same come from the Planning Committee. And of course, I would ask that City Council as well reject this petition and protect one of their Akron's greatest assets, and that is their residential neighborhoods. Thank you so very much, and you all have a blessed day.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Thank you. I'm going to ask now, is there anyone else who has not spoken wish to speak? Just in case we missed anyone at this time. And if not, I'm not seeing anyone. So I'm going to invite all that spoke this afternoon back this evening at 7 o'clock. We will have a second public hearing, of course, and I'll repeat myself. We will make a recommendation to all of council this evening based on testimony here this afternoon as well as this evening, either in favor, against, or to table the item. So not really hearing anyone here, anyone else wishing to speak. We'll close the public hearing, and I'm going to ask if there's any committee members have any questions in reference to this conditional use request on Country Club Drive. Any committee members? No, it doesn't appear to be any committee members at this point. I see Mr. Malik is wishing to ask a question or make a comment. I'm not seeing any committee members, so Mr. Malik, I'll give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fusco. We've all heard a lot about this, but I just want to, offer my perspective as the ward council person. I've spoken with most of the folks on this call, the residents here today, including the petitioners at length. And, I understand the perspectives on all sides, but I'm also frustrated by, the level of tension. I find a lot of it unproductive to accuse people of perjury. I also find it unproductive to say that folks don't have a stakehold in the neighborhood just because they're renters. So I want to address, all those things and encourage folks to, try to, follow the golden rule in that respect. With regard to, the specifics of this conditional use petition, I had received a couple of complaints about noise and traffic about this property at the beginning of the year before this petition came in, and I had spoken with Mr. Williams about them at that point. I think that obviously with all of these issues, we have a balance, right? We have to balance the needs of a property owner and the desire to, offer the benefits and services, as I think the Wadouds are doing a great job, having visited their center, offering childcare, which is in desperate need during this crisis. At the same time, there is the stake that the neighbors have in having the neighborhood, the peace and serenity and being comfortable in their neighborhood. And I am frustrated that there's a wholesale rejection of some of the concerns that I do think are legitimate regarding traffic and regarding noise. And I wish that there was a little bit more of an understanding that those could be dealt with. But as it stands right now, there are 2 Type B facilities on either side of the road there at the corner of Country Club and Menlo Park. And, as it stands now, I don't see the justification to expand one of them to Type A when there are currently existing concerns about noise and traffic and no seeming, willingness to address those going forward. So that's my perspective. I'm sure we'll continue to discuss this, but I appreciate everyone listening.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. Is there any other council members at this time have any questions or comments reference this conditional use request on Country Club? Any council members?
Mr. Chair, I can see that Councilwoman Amobian has her hand raised.
Oh, okay. Ms. Amobian? Hello? Ms. Amobian?
We lost her. She's coming back in. Sorry about that.
Okie doke. No problem. Ms. Amobian?
Councilwoman Amobian.
I am sorry, somehow I got disconnected. Is this the same hearing?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Fusco, for acknowledging me. Basically, what I want to do is ask the petitioners if they want to withdraw, because you can't withdraw this request, because with this overwhelming reaction from your neighbors, you'll be hard pressed to have a business in peace and tranquility. So you do have that option to withdraw your petition if this is what you would like to do at this point, because the against, your neighbors that are against or opposed to it is pretty overwhelming. So I just want to throw that out for you to consider to the petitioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mobian. Is there any other questions or comments from any committee members? Okay, very good. Thank you for throwing that out, Ms. Mobian. The petitioners, I'll just let you know that you have time, of course, between now and 7 o'clock. And I'll ask, I assume Mr. Antonucci has your phone number if you'd like to speak to him about that as well. I'll ask Mr. Antonucci to call you before the 7 o'clock meeting. And Mr. Antonucci, I'd like to talk to you as well. So is there anyone else wishing to say anything else, reference the Country Club Drive conditional use request? Anyone? Very good. Hearing none. Again, we'll invite everyone back at 7 o'clock to the public hearing, as well as a recommendation from the committee to all of council. We'll now move on to the third item that's up for a public hearing, an ordinance authorizing conditional use to establish an automobile sales and service facility at 841 West Exchange. Mr. Antonucci, please provide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Michael Lewis is requesting permission to establish an automobile sales and service business at this location. Although the property has been left vacant for over the past several years, past uses have been a gas station, ambulance service, and a hand car wash. The triangularly shaped, roughly 6,000 square foot property contains a roughly 48 feet by 25 feet or 1,200 square foot two-bay masonry block garage and office structure. The petitioner intends to renovate and has painted the building. He would repair the hard surface lot and add landscaping at the point of the intersecting streets. The chain link fence surrounding the property would be repaired and retained. Only after the improvements are made would he begin selling and servicing cars from the property. Petitioner would be engaged in light mechanical work and detailing in addition to the sales of automobiles, and would employ 3 to 4 individuals from the Akron area. Hours of operation would be from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. This proposed automobile sales and service business would be on the property that has been used for vehicle-oriented businesses over the years. The building with the 2 overhead garage doors is conducive to such. The property has been left in disrepair and has been an eyesore in the neighborhood in recent years. The proposed improvements will upgrade the structures and grounds and put the property into productive use and maintenance. As such, provided all proposed and required improvements are completed prior to any sales or service of vehicles taking place, and storage of vehicles on the plot is limited to no more than 10, the planning staff and planning commission, Office of Integrated Development, is of the opinion that this would be an appropriate use of the property and recommends approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. At this point, we'd like to open up the public hearing and ask if there's anyone here that wishes to testify this afternoon. How about if we first swear you in from a representative? Is there anyone here, Ms. Viviano?
Mike Lewis, yes.
Okay, the petitioner's here. Yeah, Mr. York, if you could please swear in anyone who wishes to testify before the committee this afternoon.
Well, he swore me in already.
Yes.
Oh, you sworn in? Okay, good.
Mr. Lewis. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you both. Okay, Mr. Lewis, well then, given that, you're welcome to speak to the committee about this conditional use request. Thank you.
Well, I know the condition of the property was about 12 to 15 years vacant, and it was really in bad shape, grass grown, needed painted, and I purchased the property to upgrade it, to make it vibrant to the community, and to hire 3 to 4 people in the neighborhood, and where it can be used where people can pay taxes and help a few of the people that's in the neighborhood and make it worth something. You know, people around the neighborhood, you know, where it's a middle class neighborhood, I think, where they can come and get their car serviced. Nothing major, no motor jobs or nothing like that. Something simple where by 8 they can drop their car off, by 5 or 6 they can pick it up. I don't want nothing stand overnight because I don't want nothing damaged or anything like that. And I just want to be able to be productive and hire people and not only hire people, we do even look at people that have a slight record, maybe a little felony or something like that. We're willing to even look at people like that because I feel everybody need a chance. And I've actually took people in at my other business and they end up being very good workers and turned them around.
Thank you, Thank you for what you're doing, Mr. Lewis. Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. I'm going to ask if there's anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request on West Exchange, 841. Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor? Okay, not seeing anyone. Anyone wishing to speak against this conditional use request at 841 West Exchange? Okay, I'm not hearing anyone or seeing anyone. So with that, any committee members have any questions or comments in reference to the conditional use request? Mr. Swirsky, I see your hand is up. Unmute. Unmute, please.
Okay, yeah, sorry, everybody.
You.
You own the tire business across the street?
And yes, I do. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're not planning to store tires outside at this facility?
No, sir, not at all.
Okay, and it
It's
looks
not
like
going,
a pretty good.
That's not going to be a tire shop at all. It's just going to
Okay.
be light maintenance for vehicles only.
Yeah, this is not in my ward, but it's a weird indent there. It's right on the edge of my ward. I live pretty close to there. I drive by there all the time.
You should have been able to see how much the property looked real nice now.
It's looking better. It's looking better. Yes. And I like this plan here that you have about landscaping. I'd like you to talk more about that, how you're going to even further, make it look nice and an attractive place that adds to the neighborhood. I mean, you already mentioned some of the benefits in terms of at least some people being employed, and that you seem to have a good handle on an ability to employ people who maybe other people aren't given a chance, but you do. And according to you, you're getting good results. So just please talk a little bit about how you're going to take care of this place and what your plan is for that. Some of it's in the document, but could you sort of verbalize that a little?
Well, we're going to fix the parking lot, but in the front of the area where like it piers together into a point, that area is dirt. So what I'm going to do is lay down some tarps and then put white gravel on it where it would make it look real nice. And off to the, if you're looking at the front of the building, off to the left side, do the same thing over there where we could tarp it down and put white rocks there. So it'll look real nice. And if you drive that area, you have to add a notice. We put new outside lighting. So at nighttime, it will be lit up, the dust and down lights. And the inside been totally, all the decrepitated stuff out of it, we took out. We put new drop ceilings in already. And all of the inside, if you walk into it, you won't even recognize the place. And you're more than happy if you want to see it, just give me a call.
Thanks for the invitation. I appreciate that.
I would love to show you.
Okay, and I see that you're going to have a stormwater management plan.
What's that now?
You're going to have could you talk about the stormwater management plan?
My friend has more detail on that part. I'm just, trying to get the property together. So I wouldn't be able to too much about that, sir.
By tonight, maybe?
Hopefully I can talk to him about it.
Yeah, not a lot, but just give us a little idea of your plans there. And I want to see that you own those plans and that you, you're promising to the community that this is going to be something everybody's proud of. And I do know that some auto repair service is very needed, and especially if you don't charge the same price as Firestone and some of the other corporate
No,
chains
not
do.
at all.
So I'm glad to see someone trying to provide that service, employ people, run a good establishment that follows the rules, that is something we all feel good about. So
I definitely guarantee if I'm doing something incorrect, I'm a man to say, hey, you come and talk to me about it. And whatever I'm doing incorrect, I'm more than happy to try to change it.
okay, that's a great statement. I like that, because I am somebody who will get phone calls if it's not. So, and then I will come over and talk to you. So that's and I appreciate your openness and your attitude about that. Thank you.
Well, I tell anybody, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, but if you show me and say, hey, Mike, this is what blah blah blah, I'm more than happy. Hey, take a look at it. We talk about it. And we figure it out together.
That sounds very good. So you want to be a good neighbor there, and that sounds really good. Appreciate it.
Thank you both. Thank you. Any other council members wishing to make any comments or statements? Reference to conditional use? I'm not seeing anyone. So Mr. Lewis, again, I'll invite you back this evening at 7 o'clock for an additional public hearing, after which the committee will make a recommendation to all of council. Thank you for attending this afternoon.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Neal.
I'm sorry, Mr. Swirsky.
No, Mr. Neal was trying to say something.
I'm sorry, Mr. Neal. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'm attending this meeting on my cell phone, so it's kind of hard to.
You're welcome. Of course, Mr. Neal. Sorry about that. Didn't see it.
Mr. Antonucci, he's always been responsive to any questions or concerns we've had regarding compliance requests from the city. He's invested in he's been a part of the business community there now for some years. I can't even count how many years now. And if anybody is familiar with that corner has been an eyesore for quite some time, and he's gone there and cleaned that up. So I really appreciate just his attentiveness to the concerns of the community and for wanting to invest in the community. So I just want to pledge my support for what he's doing.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Neal.
I really
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Neal. I'll ask, is there anyone else wishing to make any comments? Hopefully I won't miss you. Anyone else? I'm not seeing anyone. So very good. With that, I understand that there was a question about any of the last 3 public hearings. Did any council members, committee members have a question reference these last 3 public hearings? Mr. Kamer, I heard that you had a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe we didn't take questions from the committee members back at the first public hearing for 1259 East Avenue.
Okay.
In regards to the petition for a like a parking spot in front of the property at 1259. So I do have a few questions.
Sure.
So I'm actually looking at the Google map of 1259 East Avenue, and I'll ask 2 questions to Mike Antonucci. First of all, I'm guessing zoning and the planning commission are in favor, correct?
Well, actually, yes. On this one, both planning commission and planning staff recommended disapproval initially. So what we did was we looked at an option in case council wants to approve this, in terms of how that's going to work, and maybe, moving that bus stop, which Metro is willing to do. We had a concern with that bus stop there. So we could get that bus stop moved, and we can, there's some conditions that we put on the ordinance if council wants to pass it, that keeps the parking basically.
Well, you want some food?
So you can't get into the neighboring property or out into the sidewalk. So you have to have it all walled off essentially with railroad ties or with whatever. So there's some conditions that we put on there. We have a drawing that we worked up. So if council wants to pass it with that ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Well, that answers my other question, because as I can see on Google Maps, it looks like the only way that a vehicle can get into this property or onto this property in front of the house is from the neighbor's driveway. And it looks like that's consistent with what's going on here, because the front of the property, what's the square footage on this? It's barely anything there.
Well, there's a 27-foot depth, and I can show you. I showed the drawing earlier, but
Right.
actually the parking can be accessed through the petitioner's driveway. And what we want to make sure is that it's blocked off so they cannot access through the neighbor's driveway. You did see something on the Google Earth where somebody was doing that.
Mm-hmm.
For years, it's been a problem. That's how it got to our attention. Actually, it was through a complaint, but through the conditional use ordinance, if council wants to pass it, the only way to access would be through the petitioner's driveway, and they wouldn't be able to get to the neighbor's property.
All right, thank you. I'm actually going to drive by this property, because I'll be amazed if a vehicle is able to pull into this driveway at 12:59 and they're able to park in front of this property. Because as I see it, I mean, this could be an old Google map that I'm looking at. It says 2020, but I know sometimes these are old. But that's my biggest concern, is the front yard is very, very small, and it's like so close to the sidewalk. So those are my concerns. I just wanted to ask a couple questions. And it looks like the driveway, I mean, currently what I'm looking at with the Google map, it just looks like the driveway is covered in just weeds and bushes and everything like that. I don't know if that's currently what it looks like now.
No, that's an older picture, but You're right. It is pretty tight there.
Okay. All right. No, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for going back and allowing me to ask questions.
No problem. Anyone have any other questions about anything that we've had public hearings on? Anybody? Okay, we're not hearing any. So let's move on to the balance of the regular agenda. And the fourth item, we just so happen to have a substitute that's offered as amendment. Sarah, would you like to read that in, or would you like me to?
Either way is fine. I can read it in.
Your voice is much better than mine.
Aw, thank you. This is a substitute offered as an amendment. Ordinance authorizing a conditional use to establish a sports complex and event space and to install additional signage at 532 West Market Street and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Sarah, for that. I would like to, the reason for this substitute is just quite simply, it's item number 7 was changed. We asked for that after working with the ward council representative. I don't know, Mr. Swirsky, if you would like to say anything, but me personally, I'd like to just say that what this is, this item number 7, I'll just go ahead and read it, that the number, size, design, location of exterior signs shall be subject to review by the Urban Design and Historic Preservation Commission and the approval of the Department of Planning and Urban Development and Akron City Council. So at the end of the day, this would come back to council and we would have the final say so. That's the only difference in terms of this from the original proposal that we conducted a public hearing on last week. That's the only difference. So whenever the signage is finalized, it'll come back to council and we can go ahead and deal with it at that point. Is there any questions or comments in reference to the proposal itself and or the item number 7? Any questions or comments, Mr. Swirsky? Is that?
Yeah, just I strongly support this project and the necessary change to keep City Council involved with decision making about signs, because we're the ones who people driving down West Market will see. The good news is that the LeBron James Foundation staff have indicated a strong interest in working with City Council, working with the Design Review Committee and the Planning Department, and they're open to community input. And I think it's going to be a really good process. and we're going to end up with a great project and a good sign. And so it's a benefit for the whole community.
I agree. Thank you for those comments, Mr. Swirsky. Is there anyone else from the committee and or council that has any questions or comments reference this conditional use request and or the substitute offered as amendment? Any questions or comments? I too am very supportive of this conditional use request. This is a great, I don't know how many frequent Tangier, but oftentimes that upper deck I think is clear. So this is a great reuse of that existing structure, and it's going to complement what the LeBron James Foundation has done in the neighborhood there. So very supportive of that. At this time, short of any questions or concerns, I'm going to ask for a favorable report with suspension of the rules. Is there a motion?
Motion for favorable report.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Second.
I hear a second. Okay, thank you. All those in favor of the substitute offer as an amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Yes, the ayes have it. Very good. We'll now move on to new legislation, short of any questions or concerns about any other items.
Mr. Chair, I can see that Councilwoman Amobian has her hand raised.
Okay, I'm sorry. I only have 9 screens on here. Yes, Ms. Amobian, please, by all means. Sorry, I didn't see it.
No problem. I only wanted to make a comment that LeBron James continues to recognize Akron as his home and continues to invest in doing whatever he can to ensure that the children of his school and other children get the benefit of all kinds of resources in this community. And I think he has to be commended for all the efforts he's making to ensure that these kids get a good quality education and experience that is comprehensive. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Ms. Amobian. Is there anyone else? And I apologize if I'm missing folks. Like I said, we got the Brady Bunch screen here. We need more like Hollywood Squares or something with more tiles on it.
That's good.
I can only see so many people. Okay.
Sure.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and go forward with the balance, or excuse me, of the new legislation. Item number 2, we've just addressed and voted on. We'll report that out favorable this evening. And then we have item number 3, and I'll read that in if Ms. Biviano doesn't mind. The ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a 5-year lease agreement with an option to renew with the County of Summit, Ohio, for lease of office space in the Pride Building at 1180 South Main Street in Akron. Is there, I believe Mr. Beckert is here for this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The city is going to relocate their utility business office, which currently is in 2 different locations. Right now we have our water department and part of the utility business office in the city center building, as well as another section, the enterprise office over on Triplet Boulevard. We are going to combine these 2 operations and utilize space at the Russ Pride building, which is on South Main Street, which is the Firestone former parking deck or triangle building. The building has been completely renovated by the county or by David Marshall, and the county is leasing space in there. And some of their people are now going to be working from home permanently. So the space is now available. They have existing teller windows as well as cubicles, which are already set up. So this will be great for not only our employees, but the customer, and the customer experience for those who come to pay their water bill is really what we're focusing on by doing this lease with the county. They have a large parking lot, which is free parking. Everything is at grade. It is on the 1st floor. So when somebody comes in, they will be able to go directly to a teller window and address their water bill. And the rest of the employees will have large cubicles in the remainder of the space. And as well as the city will be saving some money because the city center building is, many of you know, we have a developer who's interested in redeveloping that building. So we will not have to pay the utilities or the security for that building.
Very good, Mr. Becker. A question for you. Does this include any utilities or any security or anything like that?
Yes, actually, the price that we negotiated, they have sheriff deputies on staff there who are their security, and those will be included. And we will also have metal detectors that people have to go through to get to the windows, and everything is there and it's existing.
Very good. And the term is 5 years with a renewal after 5?
Correct.
Okay, very good. Any questions from any committee members at this time? Any questions? Questions from any council members? Any questions? I see Mr. Malik's hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Fusco. Thank you, Mr. Becker. I know the Rest Pride building is a nice new space, and definitely appreciate that it'll be on the first floor and it'll be secure. Are there any costs in terms, I guess two questions. First, are there any costs in terms of like build out or getting desks and other office materials? And then the second question is, how much are we saving from the city center? Because it is a substantial amount of money, $750,000 here for the 5 year. How much are we saving from not paying for a city center?
I believe we're saving roughly about $120,000 a year in utilities as well as security. And there are no costs for build out. The build out is already completed for the space. And again, the cubicles are existing. They're only 3 years old, I believe. So they're brand new cubicles. The only thing we have to do is bring our computers down there and set everything up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. Further questions or comments from any committee members and or council members? Any questions or comments? Tell you what I'd like to do. I'd like to give council an opportunity to review this particular ordinance. So with that, I'd like to ask consent agenda. I assume Mr. Becker is okay?
Motion for consent.
I hear Mr. Kamer made a motion for consent. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Samples. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Yes. Against? Hearing none. With that, I don't believe there's anything else to come before the committee, so therefore we're adjourned. Thank you all for your patience.
Our next committee meeting today is public service. Those committee members are Samples, Kamer, Swirsky, Lombardo, and McKittrick.
Thank you, Sarah. We'll call the Public Service Committee to order. If I could get a motion for approval of our previous meeting minutes.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have a few pieces before us. The first one is ordinance determining to proceed with the improvement of Waterloo Road between the termini of Interstate 77 and 100 feet east of Brewster Creek by constructing and reconstructing curbs, concrete sidewalks, and driveway approaches, amending Section 8 of Resolution Number 240-2020 and declaring an emergency. Mr. Luttle?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. We brought you a piece of legislation probably 6 weeks ago talking about this project. Well, this is the notice to proceed the construction of this project. And just to refresh everybody's memory, down on Waterloo Road, we call it Scour Ditch. We are removing the 4 smaller pipes and adding 2 large culvert pipes. Traditionally, debris would back up at this ditch, and then the water in these heavy storms would overtop water the road. We'd end up closing the road. So we are going to be bidding this project right after the first of the year, and I expect construction to begin in the spring. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, do I have any questions from committee members? I don't see any. Am I missing someone, Sarah?
I don't see any hands raised.
Any questions from council members? No? Okay, what's your pleasure, Mr. Lotto?
Consent's fine.
Okay, can I get a motion for consent?
Motion for consent?
Can I get a second? Second. So I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, our next piece is ordinance authorizing the mayor, the director of public service, the director of finance, the director of law, the director of planning, and or the director of neighborhood assistance to the office of the purchasing agent to purchase miscellaneous supplies, services, repair parts, and labor for machinery and equipment used by various divisions and departments of the city, authorizing payment therefore. Amending ordinance number 134-2020, passed May 18th, 2020, and declared an emergency. Mr. Lotto?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of committee. Actually, this piece of legislation and the next one, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Finance Director Shelley Goodrich. And I see Sheldon Bowman is here too, that has been working very closely with purchasing. So I'm going to turn it over to Shelley.
Thank you. Can you hear me, members of the committee?
Yes.
Okay. As I'm sure many of you are aware, we are on a journey of self-discovery in the purchasing department of the city of Akron. Sean and I have been diligently working towards large-scale policy changes to be more inclusive and equitable in our spend. We are anxiously awaiting the results of the procurement charter amendment that's on the ballot tomorrow before we roll out these policy changes. This piece before you is an amendment of what we normally refer to as the no bid ordinance. We're requesting this amendment for the final time this year to both add some vendors in certain areas to provide for additional competition or increase the amounts due to the departments having already used the amount previously authorized by City Council. This ordinance is intended to help our departments procure what is needed through the end of the year only before we roll out our large-scale policy changes. We're going to be working to drastically revise the no bid ordinance for next year, but unfortunately for ease of administration, we need this ordinance to be amended to allow our departments to be able to procure certain needed things throughout the end of the year. So this is the piece that's before you where we're asking to add some vendors as well as to increase some of the dollar amounts that you guys had already permitted them to have on the prior ordinance. And then Sean and I, if you guys have any questions about line items, we can discuss those. But, you know, all we've gone through this, and this unfortunately is what we need to be able to get through the end of the year before we roll out our policy changes.
Okay, thanks, Shelley. So does that mean you guys need passage, or you're okay with consent?
We're okay with consent. I just, you know, we do need just passage to allow us to get for our departments to keep functioning for the next 2 months and to be able to procure some of the needed goods that they need.
Okay. Okay. Do I have any questions from any committee members? No. Council members? Councilman Mallett?
Thank you, Councilwoman Samples. And thank you, Ms. Goodrich. I just wanted to say that I appreciate the work that the Finance Department and the city administration is doing to, you know, revise our no bid ordinance and those policies. I think that, you know, I understand that we need to amend this, but you know, I know we've had some discussions about this over the last few months, and I hope that next year we're able to, you know, have a broader discussion about what things should be bid and what things shouldn't. And
Absolutely.
I think, you know, the procurement amendments on the the charter on the ballot tomorrow will help with that. But looking forward to that and appreciate the journey of self-discovery as you.
Councilman Sworsky. You're on mute. You're on mute, Rich.
Okay. Yeah, I love that phrase, so journey of self-discovery. Usually hear that like a yoga class or a book group or something.
Well, we feel it sometimes. Sean and I are like, we're digging in and
it's
really
wonderful. It's wonderful. But it, means you are evaluating everything. You are evaluating everything, and your intention is to aid in the effort to provide more equitable buying practices, and to assist particularly minority growth in that area. And that is great. And, it's just wonderful to hear a finance department use language that sounds a little bit like a yoga class. It's really great. It shows creativity as well as ability to self-evaluate. So thank you. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions from any other council members? No. Can I get a motion for consent?
Sure. Motion for consent.
I have a motion.
Second.
Can I get a second? Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Councilwoman Samples, I think you're muted.
Wait a minute. I'm looking to make sure we got one more. Okay. All these screens are open. It's driving me crazy. Okay. Ordinance ratifying the actions of the purchasing agents in purchasing miscellaneous supplies, repair parts, and labor machinery. Didn't I just read this one in?
This is a different one. So there's two separate pieces.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me start over. I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, ordinance 2020 ratifying the actions of the purchasing agent in purchasing miscellaneous supplies, repair parts, and labor for machinery and equipment used by the Departments of Public Safety, Public Service, and Finance for fiscal year 2020, authorizing the purchasing agent to enter into purchasing agreements, authorizing payment therefore, and declaring an emergency. Shelley?
Okay, so this ordinance is asking council to ratify and approve some purchases that divisions have already made on account or by other means where they did not have competition as required by the current charter. So we're coming to you asking you that we need to pay these bills. Can we please ratify these purchases? A lot of these purchases were made on an emergency basis. For example, there was a generator that we were getting donated from the law building, and we had to hire a contractor that day to go over and crane out the generator out of that building. But it was a wonderful gift to the city of Akron, but we had to move quickly and get a contractor to go out and remove that generator. Some of this other stuff is sole source. For example, the Ohio Mayor's Alliance membership, that actually should have been on another piece that came to you guys where you guys normally approve all of the memberships and fees, at the beginning of the year, but somehow that was overlooked. So we're just respectfully asking City Council to permit the city to go ahead and issue POs for these purchases and allow our vendors to get paid, because in all of these cases, we've already received the goods or the services.
Okay, and since those goods and services have already been rendered, do you need this to be passed immediately?
It can go on consent. You guys are just, obviously ratifying the actions, and then we're allowing, once it's passed, we can go ahead and get them paid. But, consent is fine.
Okay. Any questions from committee members? Any questions from council? Doesn't look like it. Okay, can I get a motion for consent?
Make the motion for consent.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. And if we have nothing else coming before us for public service, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Our next committee today is the Health and Social Services Committee, and that is council members Amobian, Freeman, Baylor, Neal, and Lombardo. It looks like at this time we have all council members present except for Freeman. Councilwoman Amobian, are you ready to get started?
Do you know if Councilman Freeman is coming?
I have not heard.
Okay. Well, everyone else is present, I take it?
Correct.
Okay. We're going to call the Health and Social Services Committee to order.
Here he comes, actually.
Okay.
Thanks for your patience.
Let's do roll call.
Amobian.
Present.
Freeman. Can see him. He may still be connecting to audio.
Okay.
Oops.
Why don't you come back to him?
I will. Baylor.
Aye.
Neal.
Here.
Lombardo.
Okay. Aye.
And Freeman.
Yes, present. Pardon me for that.
No problem. All committee members are present.
May I have a motion to accept the minutes from the previous held meeting, please?
So move.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved as presented. We have no previous issues on the in old business. So we have one piece of new legislation. Is that correct, Sarah?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. It's the ordinance offered by Mayor Horgan, ordinance amending and or supplementing Title III Administration, Chapter 31, Departments, Boards, and Commissions, Section 31.38 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Akron, Ohio, replacing reference to the Senior Citizens Commission with Commission on Aging, replacing references to senior citizens with older adults, reflecting that the commission consists of up to 13 members as established in ordinance number 267-1991 and declaring an emergency. Is there anybody here to speak on behalf of these changes?
Hi, Chairwoman Amobian. Thank you. This is Ellen Nisht with the Mayor's Office. Thank you, members of the committee. So this is a pretty straightforward piece of legislation that was requested by the commission itself. So Dr. Harvey Stearns, who many of you know, who chairs the commission, it was brought to our attention that senior citizens is no longer the preferred way to describe older adults. So this is just bringing us into line with kind of modern terminology and calling the Commission on Aging and referring to those older residents as older adults. Also, in researching, we discovered that there was an earlier ordinance from the 70s that had increased the size of this commission to 13 members, but it hadn't been codified appropriately. So we just wanted to make sure that was reflected in this ordinance. And I'm happy to answer any questions that members might have. Finally, I just wanted to let you guys know that earlier in 2020, we did launch a needs assessment with our older adult community. So as you know, we joined the age-friendly network of cities through the AARP, and this is part of that process. And we're looking to roll the results of that survey out in the next couple of weeks. So we'll make council aware of that and provide all of that information to you as well. We got some really good feedback from that community to let us know how we can better meet their needs and kind of how they feel about aging in place and the services that the city provides and how we can best serve our older adult community. So we will of course keep council informed as we release those in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. How many members do we currently have, Ellen? Do you remember?
So I believe with the last piece of legislation that was just authorized by council a couple of weeks ago, we now have 12 members. So previously it was 11, but we just filled one of those additional spots with an additional member.
So I'm assuming that we'll be the mayor be coming to us with another recommendation to bring it up to 13, or is he planning to?
I'm sure at some point we will do that. Again, we were just made aware of this.
Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure.
So
that we
yeah.
were gonna- Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from committee members?
Madam Chair, I can see that Councilman Swirsky has his hand raised.
Is Swirsky on the committee?
Oh, no, I'll wait.
He is not.
Okay.
I'll wait. I'll wait.
Sure. Are there any comments, questions from committee members first?
I'm just aware now that I woke up this morning. I was a senior citizen, and now I'm
An older adult?
now I'm an older adult.
One in the same, Mr. Freeman. You're not going to get off the hook easily.
Yeah, there's an exception written into the ordinance for you, Freeman, that says you are definitely still a senior citizen. But
Thank you.
Is there anyone else, Sarah? I can't see anybody's hand. So.
Sure. I can see that Councilman Neal has his hand raised.
Okay, Mr. Neal, he is on the committee, right?
Well,
Yeah.
yes, ma'am. Mine is kind of in line with Mr. Freeman's. I mean, I just, I've got my AARP card here recently. I'm looking forward to my Go Buckeye. I was looking forward to being called a senior. It seems like every time I get close to something, it moves the bar.
Oh, yeah.
Me and my generation, we're defined.
Oh, Mr. Neal, you're at the early end of that spectrum, so don't try to
Right.
tease us. Okay, Mr. Swirsky.
Yeah, I just want to thank Ellen and others for the thoughtfulness. And words do matter, and words do help shape attitudes and thoughts. And so I think I like this a lot better. And I think all of us, when we get a little more used to it, we'll also feel that way. And I'm going to raise the bar for future goals. Better Americans might be a good thing to consider. So with that, though, just thank you guys for the good work.
Are there any other comments or questions from anyone?
Madam Chair, I can see that Councilman Malik has his hand raised.
Sure, Councilman Malik, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to.
Did he want to respond to
that? It's all these young folks that are talking. I want you to know that. Go ahead, Councilman
Malik. Despite my age, I want to make clear that I support this. And I really do appreciate the outreach that the administration has made with this commission and the effort made with this commission. As we've seen with COVID, our aging adult population is, particularly susceptible to both the, disease, but also, or the virus, but also the isolation that it has brought along. And so I really do appreciate the lengths that have been gone, the length that folks have gone to before the pandemic, but also since the pandemic to engage with our residents who are aging.
Very good. And thank you so much for those comments, because I really appreciate the fact that we reactivated this commission, and it seems like it's stronger than it has been probably for years, and that we're listening to their input and incorporating, as Mrs. Nitch indicated, we're bringing the language up to the 21st century and recognizing that things are changing. But in this way, older adults probably include folks in the 50s, these Mr. Neal group and beyond. So, and I love the fact that we have this relationship with AARP. So there are a lot of good things happening. So I know they meet regularly. They're still considering, based on my email to one member, changing their meeting so that we can attend at some point, because I know they've been meeting on Mondays at noon, and it's hard for us to meet that day. So thank you very much. Hearing that, what is the pleasure, Mrs. Nitch?
Whatever the committee sees fit, passage is fine, or consent agenda would also be fine.
Okay. May I have a motion for whatever the committee would like to do?
I'll make a motion for consent.
Okay.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? The motion passes. Consent. Is there anything else coming for the committee? I don't think so. The committee is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Right.
Our next committee for the day is Public Utilities and Green Committee. Those council members are Swirsky, Freeman, Connor, Samples, and McKittrick.
Okay, so do we have everybody here? You want to get started?
We can get started whenever you're ready, Councilman.
Okay, I'm ready. Is
Okay.
everybody here? We haven't attended.
Yeah. Would you like me to do roll call?
Yeah.
Sure. Swirsky,
Yes.
Freeman. I can see him.
Aye.
Connor.
Aye.
Samples.
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
All committee members are present.
Thank you for doing that. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
So moved.
So,
Okay. And do I have a second?
second.
Approval. And so we'll just call that approval. We have one ordinance before us with a slight change, the name of the company, but basically it authorizes the purchasing agent to enter into a contract or contracts with not Precision Systems, but Integrated Precision Systems, Inc., to purchase the video surveillance software licensing for use at the Akron water plant and declaring an emergency. Is Mr. Luddle or someone here to talk about this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Back in July, we passed this piece of legislation. We inadvertently substituted integrative precision systems with Milestone. The legislation you passed said Milestone. Milestone is the product name. It's not the company name. So this piece of legislation is just to clean that up back from the July legislation that you passed.
Okay, appreciate that. Appreciate that. Any questions or comments from committee members? Any questions or comments from other council members? Okay, with that, do I have a motion for approval since this is mostly a slight language change?
So move.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, and can we have a vote? Mrs. Viviano?
Sure.
Want to call the names?
Sure. Swirsky,
Yes.
Freeman,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0.
Okay. With that, that's all the business we have before us. And thank you all for coming. And I'm going to adjourn the meeting because there's several others to get going here. Okay.
Okay, it is not quite 3 o'clock yet, but that is our next committee meeting, and that'll be the Budget and Finance Committee. Those committee members are Freeman, Amobian, Malik, Baylor, and Lombardo. So if you want to just give it another minute to become 3 o'clock, we can get started then. Thank you.
All right, it's 3 p.m. and we will call to order the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. And Ms. Biviana, if we could have a roll call, please.
Sure. Freeman,
Aye.
Momobian,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Baylor, I thought I saw her. She might be on mute.
I am here.
There you are.
Aye.
And
Unmute.
Lombardo.
Aye.
All committee members are present.
Excellent. And if I could have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting.
So
So
moved.
Okay. All in favor, let me know by saying aye.
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 Very good. Okay, today we have one item that is on our old agenda, and then we also have one new item. And I believe, Mr. Neal, you'd invited a guest to come in today. Is he with us?
Yes, sir, he is.
Okay, would you go ahead and be kind enough to make introductions?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today, as a follow-up to give the committee council more information in regards to budgeting online software, we have with us the developer of that software, Mr. Chris Adams, as well as from our community, community activist, Mr. Raymond Green, who is one of the community advocates who is willing to assist with this software. So at this time, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Adams.
Thank you. Mr. Adams, welcome.
Hello, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you all. My name is Chris Adams, and I'm the president of Balancing Act. We make an online budget simulation software, which is designed to educate your residents about the important issues regarding your budget, both on the revenue side as well as on the spending side, and then to give them an opportunity to provide input to decision makers about their priorities and how to balance the budget. Would you like? I've got a few slides and a demo. Would you like me to go ahead and show those, or would you like to go in a different order?
If you want to share your screen, that would be fine.
Okay, give me 1 second here. All right. So let me start with just a little bit of background. I met Councilman Neal and I think some other members of the City Council of Akron a few years ago at a National League of Cities workshop on budget engagement. The problem for which we designed our solution to solve is that in many cases budgets are complex and that they're inaccessible to the public, and that can sometimes lead to distrust and sometimes anger. Local government is continuously faced with tough choices because unlike the federal government, you all have to have a balanced budget, which means, especially in a downturn year like we have now, that you are in a situation where you're making a lot of very difficult and painful choices that will have an impact on your residents. And this is a way to communicate those to folks and to let them provide some input to you about what choices and priorities they have. And then also, just as people get more used to technology and the internet and having access to information, that people expect transparency. And as I understand it, the state of Ohio has a transparency portal that includes some local government information. But what we're finding more and more, and there's actually an article from the Government Finance Officers Association about this, is that people are not just expecting transparency, but they're also expecting the opportunity to participate and to provide some input. Thinking about how this looks to elected officials, 2020 has been an extraordinarily hard year in many ways. The three major things are: one, you're dealing with added expense due to COVID and the pandemic. You're dealing with a downturn due to loss of economic activity. And then at the same time, some issues of racial justice and equity have really been brought to the forefront. And so that means that this is an even bigger year and more important year for you to have a way to communicate with your residents about city finances. And to even think, and what we're seeing in cities, like Austin and other places across the country, is that in a pre-COVID year, there was a need for elected officials to have this type of input and interaction with their constituents. But as this year being so extraordinary, it's gotten even more so. Your faces are the ones that are associated with these tough budget choices. When there are declines in revenue, in terms of thinking through what type of options you might have, you're the ones who are the leaders in the communities in doing this. In previous years, the budget was often much more of a staff, professional staff, finance office, budget office type of activity. With the extraordinary pressures of 2020, we're seeing that that elected officials are really wanting to be able to be proactive in communicating with their residents. Just to give you a sense of the type of cities and counties that we work with, some very large ones: City of Phoenix, Charlotte, Denver, San Jose. We've got Mecklenburg County. We also have a number that are sort of medium-sized cities, such as Akron. The type of benefit that we're trying to provide is to meet those citizen expectations for transparency and participation, to get informed, fact-based input. So you're not just putting a survey out where people say, gosh, I love to have my streets paved. You're actually saying, these are all the things that we're doing in our budget, and we'd like to have your input in terms of balancing and prioritizing, including the cost of certain items. We're also trying to give you an opportunity to put residents in your shoes so that you're not just, so that people understand how hard these trade-offs are. And what we found is that when you share these tough trade-offs with residents, that they tend to become much more oriented towards problem solving and more willing to accept what might be some hard choices and to participate in making the best of a bad situation. And we also want to increase public trust and help you comply with new recommendations. And I'll show you those new recommendations in just a moment. I did want to just pull up the transparency page that the Ohio checkbook. This is a good example of making information available through charts and bar graphs. This one's probably a little bit less interactive and sortable than many that I've seen, and I think it's because it's done by the state and it has a lot of sort of data that's been clumped together, but I think it's still a good thing. But what we're finding increasingly, this is a page from a report that came out about 11 months ago from the Government Finance Officers Association. They're saying that transparency is good, but really the next step is participation. And so, as you can see from this table, the underlined areas, they're saying that online financial transparency should make use of simulations, that you should be focusing on participation, what I just was saying a moment ago, and to try to integrate online transparency with in-person whenever you can. And we've got if you're interested, I can show you how we can do that on Zoom meetings. It's actually worked quite well. City of Tacoma has had meetings with more than 450 people using our tool, providing context and letting people get information that they want. I'm going to go to a demo now and just kind of show you around and show you what we have. Excuse me. I'm going to start with just our, this is our sample, just to kind of show you what the features are, and then I'll show you what some other cities have been doing that might be useful to you. So the opening screen allows you to sort of say what you're doing, to say, you know, gosh, we've got a tough budget situation. We want your input. This happens to be the mayor of Fairbanks, Alaska. He is, the Alaska economy has been in a downturn now for a decade. And so if you were to play this video, you would find out that he would say, we're in a tough situation. I need residents to help prioritize what we should be doing. Then you have a screen that allows you to gather information. You can ask some simple questions. Are you satisfied with city services? And then you can, if you want to drill down a little bit more deeply, all of these are optional and configurable, by the way. But if you want to drill down a little bit more deeply and get a sense of where people live, I just put in my zip code, and it pulls up a map that's sort of centered around that zip code. And then it gives me the opportunity, without asking anybody to give their address, you can just say, could you drop a pin about where you live? And the nice thing about that is that it gives you, it can tell you, are you getting only certain parts of the city responding? And it gives you the opportunity to make a little bit more of a push. And so the basic idea here is that you want to convey to people that you have to have a balanced budget. So you've got the green balance bar here, and this changes colors and moves as you make choices. Then you've got spending options over here, and I'll open up those in just a moment. And that corresponds with the donut chart. And then you've got revenue over here. And so the idea is that you're sharing with your residents the type of things that you're doing, and you're asking them to provide their input. And so in this instance, you've got police operations, and you can have a little description of that. and you could say, well, I think we should be, cutting back a little bit on that. So you can hit the minus sign, and by default, it takes 1% of this number. It does the arithmetic, and then it's just put you into surplus because you've just had a cut without increasing spending in any way. One of the most useful features is if you can frame up some choices for people. In this case, there's a question about role of civilians. This is the question that was taken from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and you can learn a little bit more about it. You can say that some research suggests that you could save money by using civilians instead of sworn officers for certain things. And then down here, it gives you the option to say whether or not you'd like to do that. So you can continue with the status quo. This is what is in the current budget. Or you could say, you know what, I think that this would actually be just fine to do policing a little bit differently. And I realize that in the context of what's going on in this country in terms of thinking about police and what we're asking for police, there are a lot of different types of questions that you might want to be asking about. Should police be doing things differently? But this is just one example that we developed a couple of years ago. And so you could say, well, let's keep on doing things the way we're doing it, or you know what, let's use civilians where appropriate. And if you click on that, it gives you a $90,000 savings. And so it's then put some surplus up here. And then that surplus then gives you the opportunity to go and say, I think we ought to be spending more on roads, or maybe fund some capital projects and things like that, curb cuts, for example, to make things accessible. And then you just put yourself in deficit. So then you can go over here on the revenue side, and you could say, well, I think we might need to increase our sales tax because we're really our revenue is not keeping up. And so if somebody wanted to do that, you could do that. It would say, you know what, this is based on the law in Colorado. You have to have a vote of the people. They can let people make that change. And you can see that with each click, it goes up by 0.25%, and you can see what the impact on revenue would be. So that's kind of the overall sense of what we have going on. Let me show you just a couple examples. As I said, this year we've been seeing elected officials really wanting to have this input much more so than previously. This is Dane County, Wisconsin. It's the county that surrounds Madison, Wisconsin. And so typically we would work with a budget or a finance office with the administration of a local government. But in Dane County, the county commissioners there took it upon themselves to say, we need to have this public input in our role as elected officials, even though we're not running the government, we're not the professional staff, we're not the mayor or the county executive. We need to have this input. And so we worked with them to create one that was just for the Board of County Commissioners. And so they've got their explanation here of what the exercise is. And then here they ask a couple questions. And then you can go and you can see what the various spending items are. So you've got Health and Human Services. In this instance, they've just used the simplest way, just using the plus minus each time. Veteran Services, Public Safety, you could increase or decrease that, increase or decrease. And it all, the arithmetic gets shown here. And then over here, you get to see what the impact is. And if people want to spend more than the county has revenue for, then people have the opportunity to increase their own taxes. Now, I know that this year you're probably mostly looking at doing cuts, but one of the things that we've seen and one of the examples that some of the lessons learned from the Great Recession is that when a government proactively tries to engage residents in what's going on regarding the budget with cuts or ads or revenue declines, that it gives elected officials more options to do things. And so what this study found that was done with ICMA data after the Great Recession of 2007 to 2009 is that when governments tried to communicate with folks, they had the ability to do hard things. They had the ability to try to get out of the revenue shortfall by increasing tax rates. They had the ability to make hard choices, such as making cuts or even closing a program. Those entities that did not take it upon themselves to educate residents and to work with residents, they found themselves more limited. They did things like they underfunded maintenance, or they underfunded pensions, which led to problems down the road. And so this solution isn't going to solve every problem for you, but what it is going to do is it's going to make it possible for you to have an honest conversation with 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people. You can really, sort of push this conversation out very broadly and hopefully get a public that understands what's going on. You as leaders can use it as a facilitation tool to help guide this conversation about what you want your budget priorities to be, how you want equity reflected in your budget, and how you want to recover from this recession. So I'll just stop there and see if there's any questions or comments.
Questions or comments from, we'll begin with committee members if we could.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes, Mr. Malik?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Adams. You mentioned a little bit, but typically when you engage with a client, is it usually with the sort of city finance department or administration? And what is the kind of interface that is required in terms of transferring the data and that kind of thing? And then two, second question, I know that part of this had been that part of the discussion with Mr. Neal had been about like a 30-day trial or something like that. So can you also discuss that?
Sure. So most often our client, the people who, the entity, the part of government that hires us is either the budget finance function of a city or a county or the communications function of a city or a county. But as I was mentioning, we're seeing that given, 2020 has been a rough year in a lot of ways, that we're seeing that elected officials are finding themselves more in a position to really want and need this type of conversation, especially when the stakes of your tough choices are very high, meaning painful cuts, visible cuts to constituents. We're finding that elected officials more and more want to have that type of have an engagement tool to support your leadership in helping steer the city through these tough choices. And so we've got two instances this year that we really didn't have before, where it's been the legislative body that has hired us. And so Dane County Board of Commissioners is one, and then a school district south of Denver has also used us, just using their elected officials. In both of those instances, so we like to work collaboratively. We think that it's very useful to have the professional staff, the budget staff, and the finance staff and the communication staff involved. But we also have the capacity to essentially work on behalf of just the elected officials if that is what's desired. And in Dane County and in that school district, the elected body wanted to not so much have it be independent, but they didn't want to have to depend upon technical expertise or data that would be provided by the professional staff. So we have the ability. Most of the information that we use is publicly available, and that could be part of our arrangement with you, is that we would build the simulation for you. Now, in terms of the trial, the trial it's a 15-day trial, and it's really meant for whoever is building the simulation to get a sense of the software and to sort of see what it might look like if you were to put your budget information into our software. It's really not meant to go to the public. The trial software doesn't actually receive input. It's more of an educational tool. But we'd be certainly glad to give that to you. It's 15 days. We can even give it to you for 30 days if you wish. But the trial version does not actually accept input.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. Adams, I know we had spoke, oh boy, it's been a few years ago. I was on a phone conference with you. And,
right.
And I know one of the concerns that council had was any undue burdens it might put upon our finance department.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a place that was kind of a place I think a lot of us became stuck, is that they already operate efficiently, but they do an awful lot of work. And so that was a concern, and it probably remains a concern today. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Sure. And as you know, with Dane County, we use publicly, the county commissioners asked us just to use publicly available information, and we did. And they've got a very useful, good simulation that it really supports the leadership of the elected officials. So if your finance department doesn't really, I'm sure they're very busy these days. If they don't want to provide new information, we could work from a proposed budget or whatever information you have and put together a tool that would, allow you all to sort of test various ideas and get input about priorities and also serve that educational function, so that when you have conversations with constituents, it can be a little bit more grounded in facts and realities.
Okay. And then when you said public information, are you pulling any of that from the open checkbook, the Ohio platform that we have, the open checkbook? Are you pulling data from there, or where?
Well, you all, I think that I think your manager or your mayor has already proposed a budget, right, for this year, for the 2021 year?
Well, the budget, we actually have our budget hearings actually towards the beginning of the year, sometimes November, but it'd probably be early part of January. So
okay, so when would I think you have a mayor, not a city manager, right?
Correct. That's correct.
So when would your mayor propose the budget for the next year then?
Yeah.
You
So
know,
typically our preliminary budget would be available sometime during the first quarter of the year.
So that's actually, so in terms of publicly available information, probably the best source of that would be just to take that proposed budget and to put it into an interactive format.
Right. So the information that we publish in our annual budget document would probably be the information that they would utilize.
Mm-hmm. And we'd certainly like to work with your budget staff to ensure that everything's accurate and that, you know, whatever complexity needs to be reflected is reflected. But we could do it in such a way that it wouldn't be a burden to them.
Mr. Chair, I can see that President Somerville has her hand raised.
okay, thank you. And I'm not able to see, I'm on my cell phone, so I'm not able to see that. Yes, President Somerville?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time and coming in and giving us this presentation. Just a question, can you talk about, are there any annual fees or any updates that would be needed? Are there costs attached to that?
Yes, so this is it's a cloud-based service, sort of like SurveyMonkey. And so there are no fees for hosting. There's no fees for updates, no fees for upgrades. We would have a subscription with you that would last for a year.
And so how much is the yearly subscription after that?
Well, typically we don't. Even our customers that have been with us for 4 or 5 years, like Virginia Beach, we're charging them the same that we did when they signed up in 2015. So we typically don't raise our prices unless something unusual happens, and I don't even know what that would be.
Okay. Can you give me the amount of the fee? Because I'm not aware.
Yeah. So for a city your size, so we have population-based pricing. And I would need to know a little bit more to be completely precise, especially when it comes into the service component. The local government itself would build the simulation. If you wanted us to build it for you, then we would charge a little bit more. But what I could tell you is that for $10,000, we would be able to give you a year subscription to the software, and we would be able to build your first simulation for you. Does that answer your question?
Not really.
Sorry, tell me a little bit more, and I'm not trying to be evasive at all.
I kind of get the $10,000 investment for the first year, just trying to see what council, what the city's requirement would be after year one financially.
Yeah,
and I know that you don't have exact numbers, so even if it's like a ballpark.
Yeah, so typically it would be the same thing. It'd be another $10,000. If you didn't want us to help you with the simulation the second year, we would give you a discount. So it wouldn't be more than $10,000 unless you ask for something that would require a lot of custom work.
Okay, Chris,
and
thank
typically
you so
we
much.
don't. That doesn't happen. Yeah.
Thank
good.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair, I can see that Councilman Lombardo has his hand raised.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get a sense of, with this participation by citizens, if they're finding something, or you have so many citizens coming up with, 10 citizens, 10 different ideas. So what's next? you then, call a meeting with the finance department and all these citizens that are supposed to be participating. I mean, how many meetings are we going to have to supposedly get it right? I guess where I'm going with this is, how many chefs do we want in the kitchen?
Well, I can certainly understand that. And that's been, I think, the view of a lot of public administrators and even some elected officials, is that the budget is already complex enough that, and it's hard to talk about, that I don't think I want any more input. But what we're finding this year, especially in 2020, with all the pressures being put on it, is that these budget issues are visible, and some of the solutions, possibly some changes to revenue, they are going to be visible to the public. And so elected officials in particular want to have some input. I don't think you need to worry if you had 10 different people going through the budget that you'd have 10 radically different expressions of what you'd want to do with it. So typically what we find is that the proposed budget is, people learn about it, they spend about 10 minutes on the site interacting with it, providing input, and then we aggregate it all together. And then on the back end, we give you a series of charts that show what everybody did. And so typically what happens is that it's an educational process for people. They understand the tough trade-offs that you're dealing with. And more often than not, they very much seem to validate where leadership is going. The difference is that it's a leadership tool for you to actually say, these are our problems. These are the solutions that we're proposing. Do you all agree? And unless you're doing something outlandish, most likely they're going to say, yeah, we would love to, maintain our streets program at the highest level, but we understand there's not money to do that. And so we understand that it's going to be cut this year. And so I would really look at it as a facilitation tool. I wouldn't look at it as having 5,000, chefs in the kitchen, because if people give you about 10 minutes of their time, you're going to get a nice aggregation of everyone's views and priorities that you can then use to make your final decisions about what the priorities of the cities will be.
Okay, thank you. But I kind of disagree, because you have so many citizens out there that are concerned about the roads. Then you've got another group of citizens, vacant houses. Then another group of citizens, they want more parks and rec amenities.
Mm-hmm.
So I just see this being, again, just too many hands in the pot. So.
And so the traditional way of doing that with budgeting would be to do a budget survey, and you'd find out that, 82% of people want more money spent on parks. 89% want more money spent on streets. What's different about a simulation is that you're holding them accountable for the same requirements that you have, which is you can't just spend money that you don't have, that you have to balance to a certain level, and that you're giving them the approximate cost of various things. So essentially, you're putting them in your shoes. Now, it could be that they just dramatically disagree with everything. My guess is that if you open this up to the public, that you'd find that there would be a real convergence around some reasonable proposals that the city is going forward with. We haven't really seen. I've never seen it go totally off the rails. I've never even seen it go partially off the rails. What I have seen is that you get a public that understands the finances of the city, that they feel like they've had a chance to provide their input, that they feel heard, and that then provides you as elected leaders the ability to lead and make choices.
Mr. Chair, I can see that Councilwoman Amobian has her hand raised.
It's okay to go, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. I guess from my perspective, I'm curious, how many cities actually go through the process of subscribing for a year and using this and not renew their subscription?
About 15% don't renew each year.
Okay. And is it because they learn a lot about the budget and they take it out to the citizens and they begin to see, I mean, it's not a whole bunch you're going to learn in 1 year probably, but at least, from my perspective, the financial aspect of the city is probably one of our most important duties that we have. And certainly I can't imagine us not learning anything through this process. Just curious as to how you roll it out to the community. We have 10 wards in our city. And I know different council members have their meetings at different times. And you have so many people who attend, and perhaps there'd be more if you had something specific like this to share with them. Because I think in addition to teaching them about the city's budget and how you move things around, if you need more money over here, you have to have less somewhere else. You know, several years ago, we had 3 areas that we got the citizens to vote on to give us an increase for police, fire, to doing those 3 different things with those new dollars that, come in. However, we also are saddled with 27% of our budget that we have to set aside for capital improvement annually. And so whatever emergencies, and we never have enough in the rainy day fund. You know, I don't know. The only city I've ever heard that's in the black, and I was so surprised, but I guess I shouldn't have been, is in the Washington State area. I don't know if it was Seattle, but it was one of those suburban, I think, areas where then they pay for stuff as they go, and they were in the black, and they had resources. Maybe there are other cities around that are not in our shoes. We have to balance our budget, but we never have a lot in the reserve for a rainy day. And I think for me, when I go to these workshops, it's amazing how much I learn. And they always give us these scenarios where, this is going on and that is going on. You're building this, you're bringing in economic development. Are you from Colorado?
I am, yes.
It'll be interesting to understand the impact that the marijuana industry has had on your budget, because, maybe it's still the case. I'm sure it is, because it's not approved by the federal government. They still have to operate with money. There's no bank that would take their cash. Is that correct? Am I speaking out of turn?
I'm not an expert in that, but I know that banking is a problem for them because it is still federally illegal. I can show you another example. Please go ahead and keep talking. I'll just pull up another example.
Yeah, basically, I was just thinking out loud because I can see so many advantages to doing this. And I recognize that, I don't know if you have other cities. We have a city in which we work very closely with the administration, and the administration has for years been kind of like the controller of the information, budgetary and otherwise. And when we want to do something as a council, even though we're the legislative body, we have to approve the budget. It's always looked to as if the administration has given us permission to do it, when in fact I know that's not the case. And so that's part of what we struggle with. And I realize we can go to the financial people and get any information we want whenever we want it. However, when you see the big picture, to see everything and how it impacts another area of the city, you begin to see how you move things around and everything. And I think that's partly what this piece of software will help us understand.
Yes.
At least explain to the public what goes on with the budget.
Yeah, that absolutely.
Mr. Chair, I can see that Councilwoman Baylor and Councilman Neal and Councilman Swirsky have their hands raised.
Okay. Who was up next? Was it Councilman Neal or?
I'm sorry, I didn't see the order that they came in.
Okay. Well, we'll go with Councilman Neal, and then just remind me what the order was.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to share a few ways in how, if you remember in the presentation, it said that as a municipality, we are charged with balancing our budget every year. Members that have been on council for a while will remember there was a time when we were challenged. Technically, we did not do that. I mean, we balanced it on the books, but we had to sell an asset that was bringing $500,000 into our city every year to balance the budget. a tool like this is not just for citizens, it's for us as well. I understand Mr. Lombardo's concern about people's input, but as public servants, that is our job. Part of our charter requires that when we go through the budget process, that we have citizens' input. And at some point, I see Mr. Green is on the call. I'd love for him to put in. We have had surveys for parks where we ask people for their input. We've had surveys for trees. We've had surveys for senior services. We have had tools for all the different departments so that we could get citizens' input. But no matter what we do in the city, it all boils down to the budget. How are we going to pay for it? This tool not only empowers us with the ability to engage our citizenry and understand their concerns, but it gives us a tool to understand if we take some money from one department, how it impacts the overall budget. This is just a tool. So the one thing I like Mr. Adams to share before this is over is the different a la carte parts. What we're, when we bring in a line item to pay for something, we bring it in so that we don't have to go back. But there are different segments to this balancing act tool that we can add at different parts. And I'd like for him to talk about that later, but I'll defer the rest of my time over to the other council members. But before we get off, from the citizen standpoint, because I know Mr. Green was a part of a contingent that has been well documented in our city's newspaper about citizens wanting to have input on how the city utilizes its budget, not just with police, but with other things as well, so that we could better serve our citizens as a whole.
Thank you. Ginger, I believe you were next.
I think I should be last because I was going to recommend that we took more time. So.
Okay. Well, were there some other comments, Sarah, that I might be missing?
Yes, Councilman Swirsky and Councilman Malik both have their hands raised now.
Okay, Mr. Swirsky, please.
I wanted to ask a few questions. It was nice to meet you, Mr. Adams, and I talked to you on the phone a few years ago, and you were very helpful and open and honest, and I appreciate that. And one of the concerns at that time, which I'm not sure if it's completely been set aside, was there was some impression that we were given that your organization would help the city accumulate data to use. You would enter the data. That is now not true at this point? Or
no,
you're switching it to just publicly available. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, well, I mean, if there is additional data, no, when I said publicly available data, I was really just saying that that's typically the information that a city or a county would put on is publicly available data, that there really isn't too much new data that needs to be created.
Okay, but who would enter that data? Your group would do that for us? Because that's one of the concerns that's come up. Or you won't be able to do that because it seems like it might be a lot of work.
Well, that's the offer. So like with Dane County Board of Commissioners, so a legislative body just doesn't have the same staff as a mayor or a city manager. And so in conversations with Councilman Neal, that seemed to be one thing that would make it more likely that your body would be interested in doing this. And so in that $10,000 price, we are saying that we would build your first simulation. Okay. And there's probably more details about that, but for that amount of money, we wouldn't be doing a great deal of additional new data analysis. If there is that analysis, we'd be glad to use it and put it into the simulation. But I guess my major point is I don't think you need that. Most places, City of San Jose, City of Charlotte, City of Denver, they don't need new analysis. It's the information that goes on the simulation is really just information that exists on a spreadsheet or in a budget proposal, and we would put that into a simulation for you so that you could use the tool for your benefit.
Okay, that'd be on a permanent basis, or is that just for a trial offer or for 1 year? Is that the second year would you also do that, provide that? Is that?
Well, it would
second,
depend on our
third? Yeah.
contract. It depends on
Okay.
our contract, but I can tell you with Dane County, we're now in our second year with them. They had us build it for them the first year, and the second year they asked us to do the same thing, and we didn't charge any more.
Okay, so that's possible, but it's not for sure.
It's for sure. If we wanted to make a contract that would agree to that, we would agree to that contract provision.
Okay. A couple more questions. 15% of governments or anybody who buys any product, or 15% not reusing it, seems like something we can't ignore. I mean, obviously you have a good high percentage, you do reuse it, but it does lend itself to questioning some of the things that we had already been thinking of. I mean, I'm aware, if you're talking with some officials in Hudson, that they were one of the cities that used it briefly and never went back to it. And the only reason it wasn't anything to do with you or your app, I don't think, but that the citizens weren't using it. And I think Mr. Neal has Mr. Green here to tell us they will, but it does so I'm a little bit worried about that a lot of governments end up not using it again. Are there similar apps to this? I mean, is there, if you could step outside a little bit, and I mean, aren't there other companies doing this, a similar kind of thing?
Not really. So we often would get confused with like a Survey Monkey that does a survey, a budget survey, but it's really different.
So not you can't make those switches. Yeah. Okay. So there's no one else.
Show the interaction.
There's no one else who does this.
There's a company in Canada called Ethelo that has something a little bit like this. And there's a company in the United Kingdom called Delib that has a very good product that if you were wanting to shop around, you might want to consider them.
Yeah, I mean, that might be wise for us to shop around a little, although you seem so personable and easy to work with that that has to be considered. Getting to this point, though, in presenting these different choices, budget facts, and then choices about it, it's the same problem that sometimes surveys have or political polling. There might have been a reason why everybody thought Hillary was going to win last time. Some of it may have been the wording in the polling. And I could see that it's not as easy on this situation to ensure that we're presenting citizens with objectively stated options that don't carry with them certain loaded phrases or certain things that sound appealing, but may not really represent the real choices. So how do you speak to that concern? How would this be something that we know the citizens understand and it's accurate, and it was a fair presentation of competing options for the citizens? I mean, it seems to me like from what I've seen of surveys that they can always be kind of slanted or even not intentionally, sometimes from cultural bias, even in education. And, talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So as I said, we would probably, if we included us building the simulation for you, we would rely on the information, most likely the information that's presented in the proposed budget. And we would take descriptions of programs from that document. If that document is biased or inaccurate, then we would certainly, you would be our clients, we would certainly correct that. But we would be relying upon some baseline official documentation to do this. You're right that the way that you frame the simulation is essentially a tool for discussion, and you can sort of frame a discussion in a lot of different ways. We would be doing it in a way that we would consider to be neutral and fair. I think ultimately you all would have whoever contractually would approve this would approve this. So I think one of the things that you might be getting at is, how is this different than, say, a scientifically valid survey or social science research? And we actually have social science researchers that are using the tool, and they use it in a very different way. They use it's highly simplified. They use a representative sample of participants so that they can be sure to have a good demographic mix. What we're doing is we're trying to support governing and governance and elected officials in particular to have a useful tool for you to communicate with your constituents on, to sort of say, this is our financial situation. These are our tough choices. We would like to have your input before we ultimately make the decisions about how to use these resources and what the priority should be, and about our revenue structure. We're not really designed to guard against, people that deliberately want to bias. But we're really just trying to provide you a useful tool for public engagement on an area that really kind of has defied that, because budgets are so complex, and when people, even often elected officials, when they see it's time to talk budget, they kind of roll their eyes and they just say, sure, let's just approve this because it's a 600-page stack of documents. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, if you as elected officials would like to have a way to communicate with your residents, get some informed input, this is a good tool to do that. And you can do it with thousands of people potentially. And then you take the results and you ultimately make the decisions, based on your values and what you think is best for your constituents.
Okay. And so if I guess I could possibly see that a group that say wanted our top priority to be parks, green space, which probably I would be voting for that myself. But I know that, or it might be roads or another group. Is there a way to safeguard against people stacking the input because they have, we have to be careful a little. A lot of people come down to city council with a certain viewpoint. Some groups do a good job of that. Some groups don't. Doesn't mean their viewpoint isn't valid or right. So are there a way to safeguard so we are getting some objective information and we're not the recipients of a, well-organized campaign? Is there's a way to do that? Maybe it's good that there's a campaign. I don't know, but I'm trying to think about how this could be really an objective tool for us. Can it be?
So if you wanted it to be an objective tool, you would probably need to go the social science route, and we have researchers that can help with that, where you'd look at each question and say, gosh, is this unbiased, and so forth. And we've got, as I said, we've got 40 university-based researchers who are using the tool in that way. And then you'd probably want to hire a panel of respondents. And you can, for a city the size of Akron, you can probably get a pretty good response, a pretty good demographic representation with about 400 respondents. Typically they cost about 10 or 15 bucks a person. And then you'd have something that you could probably say, this has some social scientific validity. Most of the time, our clients don't want that because they see it as a tool for governance, and they see it as a public engagement tool. Just like when you hold a hearing or when you go and have a constituent meeting, you're not claiming that it's completely representative or that it's unbiased, but you're saying that you as an elected official, as a leader, want to have a conversation with people, knowing that certain people have an agenda. Now, and so we don't try to correct for that unless you want to go the social science route, which really adds a lot of cost. And it might be something that's useful for you, but it does add cost and complexity. Most of the time, what we're finding is that elected officials just appreciate finally having an ability to have a fact-based conversation with residents that shows the way that the various pieces of the budget interact with one another, so that they can ultimately make a better decision. Let's see, you asked one more question. About sort of detecting, is there a campaign? And I'll just be completely upfront with you. We've had 2 instances out of about, 400 or 500 where there has been a deliberate campaign to sort of influence the simulation. And in both instances, it's been public safety unions who have tried to mobilize their members to go to the simulation and to increase funding for salaries for police and firefighters. Now, we're not going to stop that, and I'm not going to say that's good or bad, but on the back end of what we can do is we can show you IP addresses of users. You can look for suspicious patterns. We give you some statistical tools. I don't want to get too nerdy right now, but we give you, mean, median, and mode. And so mode tells you the most popular choice that's selected. So if it looks like an item may not have changed very much, but you have the mode is way off to one end or the other, it tells you that there might have been a relative small number of people that have gone and tried to influence it by choosing the extreme option, either up or down. But I can also tell you that the simulation is much harder to game than a survey. A survey, you can get the survey, you can send the link out to 500 of your friends, put it on Facebook or whatever. Everybody says, go here and click, increase for question number 3. With the simulation, if you increase police and firefighters, you have to say that you're going to cut something else or that you're going to raise revenue in some other way. And it's just not as easy to manipulate. And that's why I was saying that one point I talked about earlier. One of the main benefits of a simulation is it puts people in your shoes, because the budget is not an easy thing to make decisions about. It's tough choices, tough priorities, and this puts them in your shoes. So you might find a relative small number of people that might try to game it, but even if they game it, they still have to be tell you what they would do instead, and that's different than a survey.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good point. That's a fair point.
Yeah.
All right. Who else did we have?
I believe Councilman Malik had his hand raised, and I can see Councilwoman Connor has her hand raised. If I'm missing anyone, I'm sorry. If you want to raise your hand again.
Okay, let's go to Councilman Malik, please.
Since I've already spoken, Councilwoman Connor, I'll defer to her first.
Okay.
Thank you so much. My question is more on the day-to-day operation. We buy this package, you put all the budget numbers in. How much time is spent updating questions, making changes as necessary? I mean, we're talking about a tool, but every tool needs maintenance. And how many hours would you say it takes to keep it updated, and what kind of processes that look like?
It depends on how you want to use it. So there's 2 major times during the year. So first, most cities that buy our product have a version of it all the time. But when they're not actively monitoring it, they just say this is for educational purposes anyway, because what they found is that the simulation is a way better way for people to learn about the budget than a budget book or a PAF or a popular annual financial report, something like that. So there's 1 or 2 times during the year when you want to update things. So the most common time to use the budget simulation is when the executive, the mayor or the manager, proposes the budget, and generally it would reflect that proposal, and then residents could then say, well, I'd like to see a little bit more to parks, and because I want more in parks, I'm willing to have a little bit less going to street paving, et cetera. And then the other time is when it's sort of in the middle of the budget cycle, when you're just kind of shaping up with revenue projections and your departments are starting to think about what their asks might be and what their proposals might be. And so I would say that you only need to update it when you're deliberately going out for, to seek input. And those are the 2 times of the year that you would seek the input. It's really easy to make the updates. It's kind of like SurveyMonkey on the back end. You just click on an item and put in, the update, or you can update it through a spreadsheet.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just, we've all worked with websites and programs, and my opinion usually is that they take a lot more maintenance than we think. Somebody has to be in there checking things over, looking at things, and I'm just trying to fish around who would that group be, how would that work. We already know our financial department is busy, we don't want to overburden them. So who would that entity be is what I'm trying to kind of wrap around.
So the closest comparison that as I said, you guys are a little bit unusual in that you're a group of elected officials and the legislative body. The closest example I have is Dane County, and they update it once a year. And when they're not actively using it for input, but they just want it out there for educational purposes, they just say, this is last year's budget simulation. Please feel free to look around and but we won't be updating it again until the county executive proposes the next budget in October or whatever.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I guess my comment was kind of similar, which is that I think that it's clear that this is a tool. I think that, from my perspective, a tool that could help increase citizens' understanding of the budget. Frankly, probably, my own understanding of the budget, I think is valuable, but that brings along with it the question of how that tool is used and who uses the tool. And to me, that, requires, a strategy about civic engagement, a strategy of how we're going to go about using the tool. And I think that that's what we don't have right now, which is that, it is, one of the points you made is that, obviously, as council, we don't have significant staff that may be able to handle this. And so, I think that that's something that I think that having a tool that would, especially around the budget process in the spring, allow for greater feedback and make the process more accessible to citizens is really important. But I think that it's important for us to put all of our, have consensus among the 13 of us about what we want from that and how we would all go about doing that.
I can say that you all bring an advantage that the professional staff does not bring. So the professional staff is usually really good at making the simulation. They have that data, and there's actually some good research that shows that that professional budget and finance staff agree that that budget engagement is a good thing, but they say we're not the ones to do it. They say that elected officials need to, and elected officials often say a little bit the opposite. They're like, we want to have this tool to communicate with constituents, to educate residents, and so forth. But we don't have the wherewithal to sort of, get all the technical details right. And so what we found works best in our more typical arrangement when we work with the budget finance part of the organization is we say to them, you should really work with your elected officials to promote this because they're the ones that have the relationships with residents. And you all would actually, I think, get great usership if you use this, if you promoted it in social media. We get great articles. I mean, I think the press would actually give you very high marks for doing this. I can show you a number of examples of that. You could use it in constituent meetings and town hall meetings. And so, I think everybody has their roles and strengths, but the way you would be getting around your deficiency is the same way that Dane County Board of County Commissioners did, which is to have us build the simulation for you. And then you all, as leaders, would use this to communicate with your residents and to get input that would ultimately inform your leadership and your decision making.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. You bring a lot of information and you bring a lot of discussion points that I'm sure we're going to have among ourselves. So thank you very, 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 very much.
My pleasure.
And I think we did have a motion for time. And I don't know if I'm looking around if there's a second on the motion for time.
I'll second it.
Okay. Okay. We all in favor of time?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Very good. Again, thank you so much, Mr. Adams, and I'm sure we'll be talking again.
Sounds good. Thank you all. Take care. Best of luck.
Thank you. All right. Very good. Okay. We have one new item, and thanks everybody for good conversation there. Let me bring my legislation back up. Okay. 6. All right, here we go. We have one piece coming before us, and this is an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $4 million for the purpose of refunding certain maturities of income tax revenue bonds of the city of issued in 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2019, and declaring an emergency. And we have Mr. Fricker.
Sorry, I was on mute there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a refunding opportunity for some of our existing income tax revenue bonds. So this is going to allow us to refinance some of the debt service that we have this year, and therefore have some cash flow savings this year because we do have falling income tax revenues. And refinance that in such a way that we're still going to save overall on the debt service. So it kind of helps us out in 2020 while still achieving total debt service savings over the remaining life of the bond. So we think it's a good situation. It's going to help us out this year, and we are requesting passage of this tonight.
What? How many point difference do we see between the old bonds and the new, do you think?
So it should be about $500,000 savings over the life of the bonds. Yeah.
Okay, very, very good. Questions or comments from other committee members? Please, please speak.
Mr. Chair, I can see that Councilman Malik has his hand raised.
Mr. Malik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Fricker. I know we've been doing, some of this refinancing while rates are good, and really appreciate the conscientiousness with which you help make those decisions. I guess one question is, does this extend the life of the bonds at all?
So it's not extending the useful lives of any of the assets that we originally financed with these bonds. No, it's restructuring the debt service a little bit, but all of the useful lives are still within the original amounts that we financed when we issued the original bonds.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? I'm looking around here. Not seeing anything. Mr. Fricker, what would be your pleasure on this? We want to get this passed this evening?
We would like that, yes.
Okay, then. So if someone would like to make a motion to suspend the rules.
I move that we suspend the rules with a favorable report.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please let it be known by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right, very good. Okay, we will pass that out this evening.
Mr. Chair, there's a note in the
Yes.
chat that Mr. Green wanted to speak on the budget software.
Oh, okay. Is Mr. Green still with us?
He is.
Okay, very good. Mr. Green, I apologize. I'm on a cell phone here and I did not see you. I mean, no offense whatsoever.
No
So
problem.
please proceed.
Good afternoon. How is everyone doing on the election eve?
We're hanging.
First, off for your service and everything that you do. I just want to stand in the gap and first of all reiterate that this budget tool is something that's needed in the community. I think this is a perfect starting point for us to do exactly what Brother Shama said, which is to work together on the political education aspect on this. And to work on how does the community and our elected officials work together in this aspect around a budget to ensure that all wards are getting what they need to live comfortably, to be able to understand how our government works, and to be able to import inside of our communities as opposed to extracting. I think this is going to be something that's not going to take off quick. And I heard the comment about a lot of people started this and not using it now. I think we have to take our time and get the citizens of Akron understanding how we work together. That's not going to happen overnight. Their voices have been unheard for so long. But I think this can be a process that we can start to develop that allows for this city to work together, its constituency and its elected officials as a whole to work together to have a total understanding of the resources that's coming in and the resources coming out and what's the best way to spend those resources. I think this also alleviates the issues that we have around tax increases. When you begin to use these tools to help people understand where their tax money goes to, I think you have a different discussion around raising taxes, where people can see where that money is going and the fruits of that money. Right now, we're in a system where in order to raise taxes, it has to be voted on, and nobody wants to raise taxes. And I think that's because nobody understands exactly where the tax money is going. So I'm hoping that we are in serious conversations about this tool and incorporating this tool into our government that allows for us to begin to create synergy around our elected officials in our community to work together to make this the all-American city that it is. So I thank y'all for this discussion, but I hope we move past the discussion point and go ahead and pass this and begin working with Chris as soon as possible. And the Freedom Bloc is willing to help with the input of data, willing to help gather their troops, whatever we got to do to put together a team to ensure that this tool is utilized in a proper way, and that it's not all on our finance department or all on you to get this done. This has to be a community government project.
Mr. Green, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, Sarah, am I missing anyone?
I'm looking now. I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, then at what time do we have here? Well, we'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
This is our last committee meeting of the day.